I'll tell how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, but he's out today. He is working. He's going down to Selma. We'll be hearing from him in a moment. But we do have the phones open if you'd like to call in. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We should have have time for calls throughout the program today. So would love to hear from you. Really about anything. I mean, there's so many things going on in the world. We're a Union Talk radio program, so we haven't had a lot of time to talk about the war in Iran, but I would be interested in hearing more about what people are thinking about that, just normal folks. How are you reacting to it? Are you kind of buying what the administration is selling, stuff like that? We do have a couple of press releases from unions with their positions on the war. We'll be talking about that later in the program. Lots of other stuff going on. Huntsville Hospital acquiring Crestwood is something that we've been keeping an eye on. I've got a couple of things prepared to say about that in just a moment. There's also something we'll be talking about later in the program. Just another instance in the attempt to undermine a meritorious civil service. It's really, really concerning. Just out and out political, like hiring people for political reasons rather than their merit is literally what this administration is doing in the Department of Labor and probably in other places too. We just don't have evidence of that, but we have evidence for it now in the Department of Labor. We'll be talking to a Huntsville letter carrier about some grievances that they are winning. Really excited to have that conversation. And then in the second half of the program, we'll be talking to David Griscom about his new book, The Myth of Red Texas. I don't know if you should be able to see that there. The Myth of Red Texas. It's a really, really exciting book, kind of in the vein of these uncovering, left-wing populist histories of places in the South, in the vein of, the Southern Key, Hammer and Hoe, the challenge of interracial unionism, Big Mules and Branch Heads, some really cool books in that vein. And there's so much just really exciting history about the little people across this, across the country, right? I mean, but people know about it more in places like New York or the Midwest, or out west on the ports. Just fewer people know about it in places like Alabama or Texas. And places like Alabama and Texas have just as robust a history of little people, small and working class folks fighting, what would the equivalent of the billionaires of our time. So we're going to be talking to him about that. It's really exciting. 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857 if you'd like to call in. Huntsville Hospital is seeking to acquire Crestwood. And that is concerning to me because that would mean that basically 100% of 100% of the general hospitals in the Huntsville metro area would be owned by one entity. And as I've said on this program before, and in my capacity as president of the Labor Council, which is the regional federation of unions, I am not, in principle, opposed to monopolies. And actually, I do think that you could make the case that healthcare is such a thing that, you could make a case for a monopoly in healthcare, but if you're going to make that case, there needs to be real, rigorous, and democratic oversight. And we are just not seeing that right now, right? I mean, people are raising concerns about what is going to happen to the wages and working conditions of healthcare professionals when there is only one employer that you can go to in the area to work as a healthcare professional. What is going to happen to the price of healthcare in an area when there is only one place that you can go to for your healthcare? What is going to happen to the quality of care when there is only one place that you can go to for healthcare in a region? And those are questions that people have, I think, just intuitively, right? We have, especially as Americans, we are constantly, it's beaten into our head an ideology of free markets and capitalism and competition. And there's something to that. There is something to competition sharpening competitors and making competitors better. There's something real there, right? I think that there are very, very few people who would disagree with that. And the few people who would disagree with the idea that the competition can sharpen competitors, they're just kind of off to lunch a little bit in my mind. So there's something that speaks to people on a real guttural level, especially because of the culture that we've grown up in. And I think that there may be fewer people that are aware that this is a question that has been studied, like academically, research. PhDs have put pen to paper and asked the question, when hospitals consolidate, are there trends? Right? And that, that's something that it seems like we should have an answer to, and thankfully we do. There are trends. It's not every single time, and I'm going to tell you about what are some of the things that mitigate these trends in just a moment. But there are trends. We have an answer to the question of what happens generally when hospitals consolidate. And the answer is that prices increase, that wages decrease, and that care quality either stays the same or decreases. The Department of Health and Human Services put together, surveyed the landscape last year of this question. Right? There's been a bunch of studies, a lot, several studies on this question. And so the Department of Health and Human Services last year put together a report of all of these studies, and they say that for just 4 years, right? 4 years from now is 2030. 4 years ago was 2022, right? I think for most people, most adults, 2022 does not feel like that long ago, right? I know what I was doing in 2022, right? I could tell, if you ask me a specific day in 2022, I could probably go back and look at my calendar and kind of give you an idea of what I was doing. I was probably at work. 4 years is not a long time. But 4 years after consolidation, the Department of Health and Human Services found that prices increased at least 6% over the rate of inflation. At least 6%, but up to 65%. So you have a range between 6% and 65% over inflation increase in prices after only 4 years, over and above regions where hospitals have not consolidated. That is big. That's a big difference in prices. And one of the things that I have heard people say, I don't think that I've heard a specific representative of Huntsville Hospital say this, but I have heard it relayed to me from people that have heard from Huntsville Hospital representatives that, we can't control prices because that's a Blue Cross Blue Shield thing. And that's just, I don't think anybody buys that. I think obviously hospitals have control, have at least some level of control. Blue Cross Blue Shield can do some negotiating, but if Blue Cross Blue Shield, Blue Cross Blue Shield has to insure people or they're going to lose money. And if there's only one place where people can get care, right? Blue Cross Blue Shield is kind of up against a rock and a hard place. So nationwide, 4 years after consolidation, and this is 4 years after after the market share of a hospital increases. It's not even talking about, 4 years after one entity owns 100% of the general hospitals in a region, then this happens. It's just 4 years after a major consolidation. And so what we are about to go into is an even more extreme permutation of what the Department of Health and Human Services studied. 4 years after the consolidation, prices increased between 6 to 65% over and above healthcare in regions where healthcare providers did not consolidate. So there is a real scientific, measurable thing that happens to prices when healthcare providers consolidate. Okay, so what about wages? The American Economic Review has done reports on this, studied this. Other places have too, but what I'm pulling from right now. And they all kind of come to very similar conclusions. But specifically, the American Economic Review found that for unskilled workers, after 4 years, wages decrease by 7%. For skilled workers, wages decrease by 4%. And just to show you that it is the monopsony factor of the hospital being the only people that you can sell healthcare labor to, right? A monopoly is when there's only one place from which to buy. So if Walmart is literally the only grocery store in your area, then Walmart has a monopoly on grocery within a 50-mile radius or something like that, right? That's what a monopoly is. A monopsony is the other side of that equation. It is when there is only one buyer for a specific good or service. And so when one entity owns 100% of the general hospitals in a metro, they become a monopsony for healthcare labor. They become basically the only place to which a nurse can sell their nurse labor for. And so unskilled healthcare professionals, their wages decrease by 7%. Skilled healthcare professionals, so think physicians or, something like that, their wages decrease by 4%. But not for custodians or general maintenance or electrical workers within the hospital, right? Because hospitals don't just employ healthcare professionals, they employ all sorts of people. Custodians who work for the hospital, they don't see their wages decline when there's consolidation in the healthcare sector, because guess what? A custodian for a hospital can go also be a custodian for a school or for something else. A nurse cannot go be a nurse for another entity. I mean, there are here and there nurse jobs like in schools or something like that, but one school has like one nurse, right? So, it's not really a factor in the labor market in the same way that, custodians or that other places that hire custodians are factors in the labor market. And so there's real concern here. Okay, so there is reason for concern, scientific reason for concern about prices and about wages. What about care quality? Care quality, I will say from my research on this, is the one where there is the least amount. There is the least cause for concern, but that's not to say there's no cause for concern. There was I think it was a Department of Health and Human Services survey of, care quality after healthcare consolidation. And they found that in 20% of instances, care quality did increase, actually. So, that's something. And we should know that. Care quality increased. People, there was, people seemed more satisfied with the quality they received 4 years after consolidation. 20% of people. The majority of time, care quality stayed the same. No, not better, not worse, same. And then in another minority of instances, care quality decreased. So, I think care quality, it seems like nationwide the trend is it's kind of a wash, right? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be, that we shouldn't get commitments for it. Commitments. And I was talking to Dell about this earlier this week, and I said that, what I would like to see, if Huntsville Hospital is actually dedicated to making this good for the people of Huntsville, and maybe they are, right? I mean, it's something that I could believe. Then they should be willing to at least make public, measurable, and observable commitments to that effect, right? We commit to raising wages for all workers within the healthcare system over and above inflation by this percent. We commit to not decreasing wages at Crestwood. We commit to this, that, and the third. On care quality, on prices, we commit to not raising prices on the same goods and services over and above inflation. You know, I mean, you can make commitments like that. If that's actually something that you as a hospital are dedicated to, then you can make commitments like that. He asked me if that's ever happened before in the case of consolidation, and I said no. But things like that have been committed to by hospitals in union contracts, right? In union contracts, in negotiations with unions, hospitals have committed actually to safe staffing ratios. They have committed to raising wages over and above the price of inflation. They have committed to doing things to improve patient care. You know, I mean, so not in the case of consolidation has any of this been agreed to, but there have been, hospitals have made these commitments. It is not impossible to make commitments like what I'm asking for. And, you know, on the trends, it's worth noting that on prices and wages, I said they're trends. They don't always happen. What are the things that mitigate these concerns from turning real? What are the things that make it so that prices don't increase and wages don't decrease? Well, it's unions. You know, I mean, you know, look, this is a union talk radio program, so you know, I was already inclined going into my research about this to believe that unions would be something of a bulwark for not just nurses, but also the community. And it turns out that's true. It turns out that's true, and that's what the science has said. The science has said that when when nurses are unionized, even when hospitals consolidate, wages don't decrease. Even when hospitals consolidate, prices don't increase. And I think that's because where nurses are unionized, they have recognized the power that they have, and they use it, and they leverage that power to extract concessions from management. And that's, you know, I mean, people who have power very, 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 very rarely. The phrase is power never concedes without a demand. I think that there are occasionally times that that people with power, you know, fritter out some crumbs to kind of make people happy without people asking for it. But I think it's very rare. And right now, there is no kind of organized group of people that have the power to constrain Huntsville Hospital that are trying to take advantage of that. And so, you know, I've talked about on this program how the city council has some level of oversight over the healthcare authority of Huntsville, which operates Huntsville Hospital. It is less than I originally thought it was. I thought that the city council appointed the majority of the board kind of free and clear. But actually, what actually happens is the board, and this is in the law, which is crazy. We got to change that law. It's nuts. The board sends 3 candidates of their choosing for every board seat that comes open to the Huntsville City Council, and then the Huntsville City Council picks one of the 3 hand-picked people from the board to fill their own board. and so I think that's crazy. You know, I mean, the Healthcare Authority of Huntsville has the power of eminent domain. It's a not-for-profit government corporation, has the power of eminent domain, and there is actually basically no Democratic power on their governing board. I think that's nuts. That is nuts that we have an entity in the city of Huntsville that has the power of eminent domain that has an unelected, unaccountable board. That's crazy, I think. And then, so I was like, okay, well, maybe people might say this is an extreme thing, but potentially the city council could just say, no, we don't accept any of the three candidates. And if that situation goes on for long enough, then the board could be without a quorum. But the law kind of expects something like that happening. And the law says, well, if the occupant of a board seat whose term is expiring, if it's not filled, then the current occupant stays in that seat until it's filled. So the level of power that the city council has over the Healthcare Authority of Huntsville is actually very, 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 very minimal. And basically, it really only amounts to kind of the bully pulpit, which I think is actually kind of a powerful tool, and the city council should be more willing to use that to stand up for the people of Huntsville and to advocate for the interests of the people of Huntsville and to defend us against monopolies. Yeah, very concerning sort of thing here. 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. Would love to hear your thoughts about the city council. Kmart Radio DJ says, got my dad watching. Hey, appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in, Kmart Radio DJ. I think that's a great name. Let's see. Next Generation's Characters says, happy International Women's Day, Sunday, March 8th. Good morning from West Palm Beach, Florida, says 561 Enrique. Union Gus says, good morning. Even if they aren't thinking about it from a bargaining for the common good perspective, workers are customers too. Of course, they want their hospital to not be trash. And then we've got, I don't know what is going on with, I think we've got a bot in here somehow that maybe we added because I don't know. I'm going to remove that though. I don't know why that was in there. All right, 844-899-8857, 844-899-TVLR. And we got a caller from a 256 area code on the line now. I believe I know who this is. Let's bring them on the air. 256 area code. Adam, hello.
Hey, how's it going, y'all?
Doing good, doing good. You are on your way down to Selma now.
I am on my way down to Selma, so sorry if you can't hear me too well, but just wanted to celebrate the fact that it's the 61st anniversary of Bloody Sunday, which is a historic moment for the fight for civil rights and voting rights in this country. It continues to inspire a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of people in Selma this weekend, and I'll be down there with the Recall and Justice at Hyundai Kia campaign. I'm really excited to get to talk to folks about this campaign and the connection between civil rights and economic rights. And I'll be talking to folks at the street festival today, and this afternoon we'll have a screening of the Alabama Solution, which many folks will know is up for an Oscar coming up very soon. And then tomorrow will be the march. So I'm really hoping to just talk to some folks while I'm there. There's going to be a lot of activists in the community, a lot of allies. And hopefully we can spread the good word of working class solidarity and interracial people power, because that's what it's going to take to fix any of these problems we're dealing with.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been down to the bridge crossing at Selma. Have you been before?
I have, yeah. I went the 50th anniversary back in 2015, which was huge. And then a couple years ago for the 59th. So I've been there a couple times. It's definitely a powerful experience. There's going to be, living legends there from the civil rights movement who are still with us, and really just an opportunity for folks to come together across traditions, across movements, we'll have folks from the Immigrant Justice Coalition, all kinds of people there. So really a great opportunity.
You're going to be screening the Alabama Solution tonight. Governor Kay Ivey was extended an invitation to attend the screening. She told news outlets yesterday that she would not be attending the screening. Is that surprising to you?
It's not surprising, but I really appreciate that she was invited, and she certainly knows that the invite is open to her. And, it's really disappointing, though, because how can you not know what's going on? How can she not know what's going on? And she is in a position to do something about it. This system in Alabama is a disgrace. It is an international disgrace. Our own federal government has condemned it as cruel and unusual punishment. We can do so much better. And I am thankful that there are some lawmakers in Montgomery who are pushing for some criminal justice reform this year, including from some folks that we don't necessarily see that very often. So I'm trying to be hopeful that the conversation is changing, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think isn't Larry Stutz the guy who put the bill forward that's on the table right now?
Yeah, he's got a bill to increase prison oversight, so that's a good step in the right direction. Sam Gavan has a bill around parole reform. Representative Chris England in Tuscaloosa has several good bills. So, it's a good time to talk to your lawmakers and let them know you're paying attention to this issue.
Yeah, we should try to get Larry Stutz and maybe Sam Gavan on the program. I've liked what Larry Stutz has said about the Huntsville Hospital stuff, too. The Recall and Justice campaign is another campaign that you're a part of, and there's going to be some activity around that campaign down there this weekend, too, right?
That's right, yeah. We'll be talking to folks. We'll be talking to workers. We'll be spreading the word of this campaign and really making the connection between the incarcerated labor and the system that the Hyundai Kia supply chain uses, where they have documented instances of exploitation of prison labor, as well as documented instances of worker deaths and safety concerns, instances of illegal child labor in the supply chain. There's just a lot of issues with the Hyundai Kia supply chain, and it's one of the largest employers in the South. So it's really important that we get, as you mentioned with Huntsville Hospital, we need real, clear, enforceable public commitments that we can hold these companies accountable to, so we can protect the workers and the environment and the community.
All right, Adam. Well, I appreciate your call. It's a really exciting campaign that Recall and Justice is putting on. The folks from JMA are a big part of it. There are several organizations, including Alabama Arise and the North Alabama Area Labor Council, that are part of it. And yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly like you said, just like with Huntsville Hospital, these huge companies that rely on workers and the community to be able to make all of the profits that they are making should have to make commitments to us. And so I think that's a very it's a very modest ask, and I appreciate the people who are working hard to put it on the table. Is there anything else before we let you go?
Go to recallandjustice.org and you can learn more, and hope to see some of y'all in Selma. Appreciate this love and support and solidarity forever, y'all.
All right, Adam, thanks for the call. We're going to be taking a break here in just a moment. We're going to be coming back, taking some more calls, 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. Would love calls on anything, particularly if you're in Huntsville. What are you thinking about Huntsville Hospital's acquisition of Crestwood? We'll be talking momentarily also to Cordell Mardis from the National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 462 here in Huntsville, about some stuff they've got going on. Really excited to talk to you about that. And more, so make sure you stay tuned. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger food drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. Adam Keller is out of studio. He is heading down to Selma for the bridge crossing. Today on the program, we just finished up a conversation about the Selma Bridge crossing and Huntsville Hospital's acquisition of Crestwood. If you'd like to weigh in, 844-899-TVLR. TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. We'll also be talking momentarily to Cordell Mardis, a steward for the Letter Carriers Union here in Huntsville. So we're going to be doing all that and more on today's show. If you'd like to call in, the phone number again is 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a voicemail at any time throughout the week, and we might respond to it on the next show. We do have voicemail queued up that we'll be playing later in the program. You can also leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support keeps us on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report or tvlr.fm/donate. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, you should get your local, your district council, your region, or your international to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that. Since Adam isn't here, I will add the disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you are on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. As most of you know, we're not media professionals, just diehard unionists who want to amplify the voice of the working class in the American South. We're hoping that this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us. We've got a caller on the line. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. This caller also from a 256 area code. Believe this is Dwayne. Dwayne, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind, brother?
Well, I want to talk about the Huntsville Hospital, and I want to give remedies, okay? You know, you've heard me call a lot, and I like to tell you what can be done, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, what's going to happen because, and I'm not an attorney, what's going to happen because of this is going to be the inaction of the Hart-Scott-Rodano Antitrust Improvements Act, which has to do with the Federal Trade Commission, okay? Have you ever heard of that, Jacob?
I haven't heard of the act. I mean, I'm familiar with the Federal Trade Commission, but I haven't heard of that specific law that you're referencing.
Okay, so there's an act, and actually Huntsville Hospital acquiring Crestwood makes this act become enacted because of the amount of money. And it gives a 30-day period where the Federal Trade Commission can prevent or actually instigate things that must occur to make even a pre-buyout monopoly thing be kept in check, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, this gives the regular person or even the nurse that's been on your program the right within that 30-day period to go to the Federal Trade Commission and suggest as to, you know, the problems that they may face that could, that actually may be said or in any way potential for this to be a monopoly-like situation of the buyout. Have you got me? Mm-hmm. So I'm wanting to make sure that everybody knows they have a 30-day period. Even persons that would meet as a entity that are against this can contribute to the Federal Trade Commission looking at what I'm saying. So I wanted that to be, and Stacey George is going to be at the bridge also.
Okay, cool.
I think he got invited by some persons and everything too, so I wanted to bring that up for you. And let's see, anything else that I can think of? Everybody needs to go out there and support Senate Bill 316. Call your area Alabama senators and ask that they enact this in its full, complete written form as Senator Larry Stutz put forth. I can't be more adamant about that, everyone. And anything you want to talk about it all, from me from anything I know there, Jacob.
How close, Dwayne, how close are you to Larry Stutz? I mean, has he been talking to y'all about this bill, or?
Stacy was down there, and at the time with his contributions, which had to do with the prison guards themselves, Jacob, and he spoke with him during like a whole week's period before this and after. And of course he's had contact. Wes Kitchens and other senators have actually said how good is this bill, and been very positive about it in their interaction with Stacy as far as their support for it. So, that's a really great thing.
Do you think that Stutz would be willing to come on the program?
I think he would. Nice guy. Yeah, I think he would. You just need to, contact his Montgomery office. And let's see. Can I give out the number that everybody can call to talk to their senators and leave a voicemail?
Yeah.
Okay, it's 334-621-0700. Might double check that just to make sure, I'm older and I might have got something crossed, but I definitely didn't get the 334 or the 0700 crossed out, and I do believe it's 621. So Everybody call, really nice clerk lady, just say, I'd like the voicemail, know who your area district senator is, and call and say you want the full, just the way Larry Stutz put this forward, because if they mess it up, Jacob, they can get in there and make this not as good as it is by saying we don't want to do something. We don't need them to do that. We need them to do exactly what's written, because it is fantastic. And what it does, it could be each state's way of taking care of the prison system problem if it was enacted everywhere. That's how good it is.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I don't think so at this time. I appreciate the call, Dwayne.
Okay, thanks a lot. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857 if you'd like to get where he was. Really excited to finally start seeing some movement on the prisons in Alabama, because it's been it's such a huge concern, and it's been, people really got to go watch the Alabama Solution. If you have not seen it yet, you really should see it. It's just, it's disgusting what we are putting people through. And the ability of people to restrict their compassion and their empathy for others because of crimes they have committed is a really, in my view, anti-human impulse. I think relevantly for a lot of Alabamians, it's an anti-Christian impulse. Whether or not somebody has done a crime, we should not be, treating them like they're an animal. And that's not even a comment on death penalty or not or whatever. It's a comment on what are we going to do with people while we are housing them. Are we going to, torture them? Because that's what we're doing right now, basically. So I think that people should really be upset about this. But 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. We've got in studio now Cordell Mardis, a steward for the National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 462. Really excited to talk to him this morning. Cordell, welcome to the program.
Man, welcome, Jacob. Yeah, it's an honor just to be here, I tell you. I appreciate y'all having me.
I appreciate you making the time to come in. Cordell, I think that you do a great job, and I appreciate our partnership over the years. You've got a really exciting case. It's sad that it had to happen, but it's an exciting, testimony to the power of unions. But before we talk about that, can you talk a little bit about what's it like being a letter carrier? What are some things that folks kind of wouldn't think about being a letter carrier? What do you like? What do you not like? Stuff like that.
Well, let me just say this. I think the United States Postal Service is the greatest corporation on this side of eternity. I'm gonna go ahead and say that. Hey, we're a family like everybody else. We have our own problems. We have dysfunction, but we just have to use what's in place to make the wheel turn. Honestly, you know. And the beauty of this job is we're a service to the public. We service the people, and a lot of people today are really not as knowledgeable of that. They think that the Postal Service is a business for profit, and it's not. It's a service for the American people. It's America's post office. That's really what it is. And the letter carriers, we're the last line of defense with that. We're the finished product. We're the physical, visible representation of the company. So you see us out in the community, and we serve you all, and we love doing it. And I think that's the joy of it. You get to interact with the people in the community, and you watch these kids grow up.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's an unexplainable feeling. It is a joy. It is a joy doing that.
Yeah, I think it is. There's got to be something really exciting about that, about being able to see kids grow up, and yeah, I mean, so really glad that there are folks out there like you that are committed to, committing to making the Postal Service run. I mean, it is such an important institution. It's in the Constitution.
It is. It is in the Constitution.
There are so few things that are important enough to have made it into the Constitution, and the post office is one of them.
It is, and people need to understand that the framework and the structure that this corporation was built, it was just to be what it's being, a service for the people. That's what it is. Other corporations, they use our network, but they don't have the will, the manpower, or the brains to establish the network that we have. That's why you see the corporate greed trying to come in, because they see how it could better benefit their service as well. So that's what it is.
So, you're a booster for the Postal Service, like as an entity, but you're also, you're not in management. You're a member of the union. You're in leadership of the union. And so there might be some people that that see a sort of dissonance with that, because they think of unions as primarily and only an antagonistic force to the entity where they represent people, right? They see that the only thing they can think of unions as is as an enemy to the employer, and that's like really not your view. Can you help kind of connect the dots for people who might be confused by that?
Most certainly I will. So the union is not an anti-management thing. The union is put in place. It's almost like insurance. Almost, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And so the union is here just to enforce some of these policies, some of these contracts and rules and regulations, and enforce our rights. Really, that's what it is. As an employee of the United States Postal Service and as a letter carrier, you just have rights. We inherited a lot of rights. And it's because of the struggles and the sacrifices that the people that came before us made. And so we have the luxury of being able to come to work and work the way that we do. However, the union is there to keep that balance, to make sure what was achieved and what the people fought for is not taken away. And so sometimes that can be a constant toggle.
Yeah.
But, my goal is to always try to find some common ground, because we have to make sure you all get the mail. At the end of the day, like I say, family has in-house problems, and we try to keep it in-house. But sometimes, it leaks out, and it leaks out into the general public, and it's a lot of misconceptions. But no, the union, and I can speak for myself especially, we're here to, number one, make sure that every employee has a safe, functioning working environment, making sure that the workroom floor is safe, and then also making sure that we're safe in the community. And that's where people like you all come into play, contacting your legislators and your senators and your congressmen and letting them know, like we got HR 1065 to protect the Letter Carriers Act. And the great state of Alabama is the only state where it is a felony offense to attack a letter carrier. Only in Alabama. So we need everybody, your listeners that's listening throughout the Tennessee Valley and other states, get on your Congress. Your mailmen need that protection. We definitely need that. We're out everywhere. We're literally, we're in the streets. We are in the streets. We're in the White House, and we're in other type of houses as well. But we're servicing everybody.
the attacks on letter carriers is something that has, I've certainly been seeing it a lot. I don't know how. I mean, my feed is very like worker focused, so the social media sites know that that's the kind of news that I see. But it is crazy how many instances that you see of violence against letter carriers. I mean, what is I don't even know what the impetus would be for somebody to want to attack their letter carrier, but it's happening a lot. I mean, it's not a fake problem.
It's not. It's definitely not. And you have to use a lot of discipline when you're on the route. Mm-hmm. I tell them when they come through the academy class, I tell them you have to be disciplined, meaning it's no telling what you're going to see when you're out on the route, because we are in the elements. We are outside, as they say. We outside. The letter carriers are, and we always are. And so it's a lot. It's always a lot going on. Right. And if you're not in-house, you just wouldn't know some of the things that we see and have to go through just to make sure you all get your stuff. Right.
Yes. And, I think that my position would be that even though that there's certainly there's an antagonism that is inherent to the management-employee relationship, but it does, I think that my position would be, and I would imagine the position of the union would be that, like, look, if everybody does what they're supposed to do, then everything works well, right? I mean, the letter carriers have a contract with the Postal Service. Yes. If the Postal Service holds up their end of the bargain, then everything's hunky-dory. Nobody has to file grievances. Everybody's happy. When there's discipline that needs to be administered, then they go through the proper channels and they go through the proper steps and they justify it, and that discipline gets administered. And on the letter carrier side, you've got a contract, you have protections. If you go out and you clock in, you do what you're supposed to do, then management's not going to have any problems with you. And I think that's, I don't know. I mean, there's if everybody does what we're supposed to do, then things can be great. Yeah. But unfortunately, not everybody does what they're supposed to do. And I think that is why unions are so important, even where you're in a workplace like you are, Cordell, where you believe in the mission of the Postal Service and you are a fan of the Postal Service. Right. You think it's a great institution. Yeah. I think that unions are important to give people protection from people who are not willing to kind of play by the rules.
Yes. And so you're absolutely right, Jacob. It's wild, I tell you. So a lot of the problem is people come from out of town and they're used to doing things a certain way. And then they come to a new area and they think that they can still continue to do things a certain way. Here, when we have local provisions set in place and local policies that have been going here for 20, 30 plus years, but we always get a new group that comes in and they say the heck with what y'all going on. I'm going to do, as one often quoted said, I'm going to continue to do what I do till I'm made not. Mm-hmm. And right. So when you have those situations, then we have to go to the grievance procedure, because that's the only tool that we have to protect ourselves. And the grievance procedure is not microwavable. It's more like a crock pot, and you just have to believe in it. And sometimes it has to slow cook. However, in time, justice does get served.
Mm-hmm. And so, you've been working on one of these instances where the union feels pretty strongly, and I think that it ends up that the union has been proven right, that management in Huntsville has not been following the contract. In what ways has management in Huntsville, specifically related to this grievance or this set of grievances, in what ways has management in Huntsville not been following the contract?
Management in Huntsville, really, it's just real simple. Article 15, Article 14, non-compliance. Non-compliance is Article 15. We're actually settling a lot of deals, and I know I can speak for myself. We have actually settled a lot of deals at the lowest level. However, it's non-compliance. You agree to these terms and conditions. You admit to fault, and we're going to go about doing business this way moving forward, but then it never happens. And so then you have to file another grievance for non-compliance. And so that's the main problem in Huntsville. It's just non-compliance. And, we're always going to be on safety. And so Article 14, that's a safety issue. And so those are the main things. It's really just non-compliance, So we have a new group in town right now working to resolve a lot of these previous issues that, just to come in and clean it up. And I'm glad that our cries and complaints have made it a little bit further up the chain. And so we got some people in here, they say they're going to do the right thing. And I believe they are. I think that we can collectively work together, because at the end, if the ship sinks, we all drown. We in this together, whether we want to admit it or not, union and management. But yes.
What are the things specifically that they're not complying with? Like, is it a time issue? Like they're working people over and above the amount of time that they're able to work them, or is it a job classification? Like, what are the things that they're?
Okay, so I don't want to get in too particular, but I do want to inform the public. So pretty much it's a trickle-down effect. It's a lot of short staffing, right? And so pressure is put on mid-level management to still perform and do things. And so in an attempt, this is just my personal opinion, for the ends to justify the means, then, you see the contract being broken. You may have improper overtime assignments or the crossing of the crafts, things of that nature. That's mostly what you're seeing. And the trickle-down effect that is you have carriers out a little bit later than normal, and the mail volume is super. It's up. Not the mail volume. The mail volume is a slight decrease, but parcels are up real big. And so a lot of older policies that were made years ago are still in effect today, and that hinders from their perspective. But again, because we're all adults, we have to still find some common ground. We have rules. They have rules they have to follow by. We do too, and we have to find some middle point. But mostly, it's Article 8, like I say, the overtime, improper overtime, and crossing of the craft. That's the main issues, and I think we're dealing with that nationwide.
And so, I see letter carriers out on the route sometimes at like 7 or 8 at night. It's crazy how late you see them. And so the kind of course of action that typically happens is you basically, if you are told to work in a way that's improper, you have to go and work. You go work. You do, and then you grieve it later. Right. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so the grievance, if you are made to work longer than contractually the Postal Service is allowed to make you, then there's like a financial penalty that can be imposed on the Postal Service, and you can basically get some amount of dollars per hour that you worked, right?
Right.
Some sort of financial thing, and the post office has to write you a check for violating the contract.
Yeah, they'll end up paying. Well, it'll be in addition to on your payroll if once the grievance is awarded, they pay you out individually or class action. Just depends on.
And so, this set of grievances, you said kind of generally it's like working people a little too long, working people outside of their job classifications. What kind of scale are we talking about here?
Well, just let me say, okay, so I'm going to speak personally because I represent the carriers at the Maston Lake Station. Maston Lake, what's going on? How y'all doing out there? Hey, let's continue to make the lake great. Appreciate y'all, what y'all do. We here now. We ain't got next, we got now. It's our turn. But so at Maston Lake, we had a series of issues, and it was non-compliance on some safety things. I can't go in too deep because it's still, believe it or not, it's still ongoing. However, it was some safety issues that kind of spiraled, whatnot. And in an attempt, local management did settle at the lowest level. However, there was a non-compliance. New group comes in, do not want to honor the agreements that previous management made for whatever reason, and think that they don't have to comply. And then so it goes up and up, and it goes all the way up. Sometimes we've even had, we just got an arbitration decision back on one of the grievances. But we were able to get some of these settlements at our station resolved at the pre-arbitration level, where the Labor Department and the regional union, they mediated that process, and so and they put the settlement out, and so that's yeah.
Yeah, and I meant the monetary scale. Are you? Okay. Is that something that you can share with us at this point? Like how much money you're going to be going to letter carriers in Huntsville as a result of these grievances?
Well, my auntie always told me a true gentleman doesn't kiss and tell.
All right.
But I will say this. This isn't an attempt to make things better. Money sometimes can be used as a Band-Aid to mask the problem. And I mean, hey, it sometimes it's good, but hopefully that we can get some structure and we can get this thing smoothed out so we don't have to keep going this route. But
that's the real goal of this. I mean, the short-term goal is people like money in their pockets and you like seeing a big number on the grievance check, and that's all well and good. But the real goal is that everybody does what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
That management stops violating the contract.
Yes.
That everybody, I mean, the goal is not extracting more money from the Postal Service.
Right.
The goal is changing their behavior.
That's it, because I'm going to tell you this. I've worked at the post office here in North Alabama when it was flowing smooth. Now it does seem like it takes a large lump sum payout for everything to smooth out. But once you get some middle point, when it runs good. People that want to work overtime, they have the option to work it. The people that want to go home early, they can go home early. Everybody's good. When everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, it is a good thing. Now, everything can't be perfect. Somebody's going to always feel some type of way. But as long as the majority, and we keep this thing moving, and you all getting you all's mail at a decent hour, you don't have to worry about coming outside and, all of these things, then we're good.
We had a good question in the chat that Mark did answer in the chat, but I figured for the people who are listening online and on the radio, they wouldn't have seen the chat, but they might have this question. When you and I are talking about a craft violation or somebody working outside of their craft, you and I know what that means,
right.
but maybe people people who are who don't work in a union workplace, they might not even. What does it mean to be made to work outside of their craft? Why is that a violation of the contract? So what does it mean to say that management improperly made a letter carrier do outside of craft work?
Okay, so pretty much what that means is if you were hired in, you applied and got hired to be a letter carrier, that is your craft. Or if you hired in and you were a clerk or a PSC, that's your craft. Or if hired in through maintenance or whatever avenue, non-career, that would be your craft. And so, however, management had, they have to run the operation how they see fit. And so right here, right now, if you're a letter carrier, they may have you carry mail on the rural side. So rural mail and city mail are two different, distinct crafts. I know the listeners probably, because I thought this as well too, that, mail is mail. The post office, but it's a lot. It's a lot that differentiates the two, the rural side and city delivery. And so there is a shortage in rural letter carriers across America, especially here in North Alabama right now. Right. And so that does cause a lot. And so a lot of people are going outside their craft. You may even have clerks delivering rural packages or things of that nature. So that's an example. Just if you hired in to do one job, but you're doing something that you weren't hired in to do, that's on the crossing craft side.
And I didn't mention, and so I don't know if you'd have anything to say about this, but contract negotiations at the national level started last week.
Okay.
Is there anything that letter carriers in Huntsville are tracking in particular that y'all would like to see in the new national contract?
Well, pretty much most of the same things that we talked about at the rally. I mean, of course, people want to be compensated better. I mean, that's just what it is. That's just the fact of the matter. Economy is a little different now. Everything's going up, but wages hadn't gone up. And so if we can kind of close that gap a little bit, I do understand that funds have to be appropriated correctly and all of that thing. However, a well-compensated employee, you would definitely get a lot more production out of them. When things are flowing better at home, outside the clock, that spills over onto the clock, just like the negative side does as well.
Totally agree. How long have you been at the post office?
So collectively been there 13 years. Started as a rural carrier in Decatur, Alabama, and then because I didn't know, I just thought mailman. I just said I think and once I saw how everything was moving, I said no, I think city delivery is what I thought I was signing up for. And so I got on, and I'm glad I made that choice and decision, man. It's been an eventful career every step of the way. And I know y'all want to hear about it. Let me just say this. The carriers in Huntsville, when we do get awards, we get awarded very handsome. They are. Branch 462, our union president, Kate Drass, former president Mike Schubert, former president John Winston, all these people, they have kind of set precedent here.
Right.
And so a lot of these contract violations, these things have been etched in stone for so many years. So it makes my job a lot easier.
Right.
Yeah, and it just does. And so when we're dealing with non-compliances that go back for years and years, that's why the monetary value has been raised so hard, but so high, because it's just in an attempt to get them to comply. That's all. That's all it really is.
All right. Well, Cordell is a steward for the Letter Carriers Union here in Huntsville, the National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 462. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before we let you go?
Man, I just want the people to know, like right now, we just need to unite. The people need to come together. We're all workers. We all provided honest living for our family. Right now, we need to pay attention to legislation that is harmful to our livelihood. We come from all different areas, all walks of life, but the main thing is we all want to provide a good, honest living for our family, want to work hard, and then we want to have a little bit left over after we work hard so we can enjoy some of the new amenities, especially here in North Alabama. You know, North Alabama is steadily growing by the minute, and hey, we service this area. We want to have a little bit left over too to stimulate the economy.
And not only money left over, but time left over too. You want to have some time off. You want to have the weekends.
That's that is true, and you can't put a price tag on the time. You really can't. Right. Yes, you can't.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming in, Cordell.
Man, I appreciate you having me, man. Hey, all honor and glory go to God Most High, man. I just thank y'all and continue to do the great job that you do, too, for the listeners of the Tennessee Valley and letting us know how we need to move during these times as well, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to take a break really quick. We will be right back. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communications system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morris, and my co-host is Adam Keller, but he's out today. He's on the way down to Selma for the bridge crossing tomorrow. With the Recall Injustice campaign, trying to get a community benefits agreement at Hyundai Kia in Alabama and Georgia. Really appreciate his work on that really important campaign. We had a question in the chat from Mark, said, ask Cordell if he thinks he would approve a territorial COLA for New York, New Jersey, California, and for people's information, Hawaii and Alaska do get a 25% COLA. Cordell said he does approve of a regional COLA, and I would also approve of a regional COLA. Cordell said that, there are some people that worry that COLAs would get taken out of the paycheck of other people, and obviously, if that's the implementation, then that's a reason to oppose it. But it doesn't have to be the implementation. Everybody's, you could have the base wage stay the same and then increase it with respect to the cost of living. That's what the federal government does, actually, with everybody else. GS employees. There's a regional cost of living adjustment. You got a base wage all across the country, sets the floor, and then you get a increase wherever you're at. And so, I don't think it has to come out of other people's paychecks. And I do think it makes sense to say, look, we got a cost of living thing, a huge difference. $21 an hour goes much farther than in Alabama than $21 an hour goes in New York City. And I think it makes sense to say, go, COLAs are fine. Regional cost of living adjustments. And Cordell does too. 561 Enrique says, I've been thinking of, with how everything is going, changing careers because postal workers don't make much. I've been with the Postal Service since 2018. Yeah, it's tough. It is tough. 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857 if you'd like to call in. Would love to hear from you. I want to talk about this story that I was telling Adam I'm going to live out on the show today. And I'm going to do that a little bit. Because there's I was talking to Dale a couple of weeks ago about some norms that the president was violating. He was like, oh, my norms. Oh, no, nobody cares. But there's a reason that we have norms in place. And there's a reason that there are protections against, political corruption and cronyism and stuff like that. And I want to share a story with you to kind of illustrate the way the attitude of, I do still think that most civil servants have this attitude throughout the federal government, and I am positive that's the case. I would be willing to put money on it, that most civil servants across the government still have this attitude. But when I was a summer intern almost 10 years ago. Golly. When I was a summer intern almost 10 years ago, I was working at the Corps of Engineers, and my supervisor, I knew he was politically conservative. I didn't know how he voted in the most recent elections, but I could tell that he was politically conservative. Not least in part because he worked for the Reagan White House. So it's not difficult to kind of see where he would land politically. This guy works for the Reagan White House. But I asked him. I had developed a rapport with my supervisor, and we had a good relationship. And I asked him for advice on my resume when I was applying to get a permanent job with the Corps of Engineers. I told him that I was in the statewide leadership in Alabama of the College Democrats. Father, forgive me, for I have sinned. But I was. And so, in my mind, I felt like I was going to be in project management, and my job was program director for the College Democrats. And so I literally managed projects for the state organization for College Democrats. And so I felt like that was relevant experience to my job doing project management. But I also was like, I'm in Alabama. I probably the people that are going to be evaluating my resume are going to be politically conservative. Is that going to hurt me? And my conservative supervisor worked in the Reagan White House, said, Jacob, put that on your resume, because that demonstrates leadership and organizational capabilities, and being a civil servant for the federal government is not about, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? It's about, do you have the merit? Can you do the job? And so he encouraged me to put that on my resume because he felt like that was relevant experience that would help me even with a hiring panel that was politically conservative. And this administration is completely trying to undermine that notion of an apolitical, a nonpartisan civil service. And here is just the most recent story. This came out a couple of days ago on Popular Information from Judd Legum. On Friday afternoon, Liberty University Law School emailed its first and second students about, quote, an exciting opportunity to intern with the Department of Labor in D.C. The available positions covered the full breach of the DOL's activity, those being litigation, appeals, regulations, policy, etc. And the email sent by Derek Green, associate director at the law school, stressed that those accepted into the program will make incredible connections that will pay off later, and that it could lead to a full-time job for after your 2027 graduation. But they had an important caveat. Only passionate devotees of President Trump would be considered. This is straight from the email. Quote, the two most important requirements are you must highlight, red, bold, underline, you must be aligned politically with President Trump and his administration, and you must be willing to work hard. Listen to this, don't be scared off by the transcript requirement. GPA is not a strong factor. That's insane. GPA is not a strong factor for a summer internship at the Department of a legal internship at the Department of Labor in Washington, D.C. It is more important that you be aligned politically with the president than whether or not you are a good student. That's insane. The email was provided by a source on the condition of anonymity, fearing retribution from the school. You should really check out the piece. I mean, it's gonna, I'm not gonna be able to get to all of it. The title is "The Meritocracy Exposed: Internal Emails Reveal How the Trump Administration Hires Legal Interns" by Judd Legum on Substack. Liberty University has not contradicted this reporting. Green also stressed, the associate director at the law school, Green also stressed that anybody interested in the DOL legal internship should absolutely apply because, quote, the person conducting the interviews is Vittoria Diadesi, a 2025 graduate of Liberty Law, along with a representative of the White House Liaison Office. The interviews will be, and this is a quote from the email, the interviews will be a combination of traditional interview questions and political questions like, did you vote for President Trump? Do you disagree with the president on anything? What do you think about XYZ executive order? Ha! Yeah, this is crazy. I mean, this is insane. Being asked in a interview for a legal internship with the federal government, did you vote for the president, is so insane and so antithetical to all of the anti-corruption laws that Congress has passed, to the idea of a meritorious civil service, which was the whole thing. You'll remember why we had to hate DEI, even though it is not the case that people were hired in the federal government just because of their skin color. But that was what people were made to believe. We had to get rid of DEI because we need a meritorious civil service. And now it's literally just, do you support the president? Judd says in his case, in his thing, that in most cases, it is illegal to condition federal employment on a candidate's political views. That's true. But they describe the internship as, quote, a political position in which interns will serve the Trump administration for the duration of their internships. And that suggests, Judd says, that the DOL is trying to treat these internships as Schedule C positions, which are defined as confidential policy determining, policy making, or policy advocating. And the Supreme Court has ruled that only these policy positions can be conditioned on political beliefs, but the DOL would have a difficult time arguing that these low-level internships qualify for a Schedule C designation. A confidential position by law is, quote, identified by its close working relationship with the president, head of agency, or other key appointed officials who are responsible for furthering the goals and policies of the president and the administration. Unquote. Judd says that it seems highly doubtful that these summer interns will be working closely with agency heads or other top officials. And further, summer interns are not tasked with determining, making, or advocating for policies. The description specifically notes that some of the DOL internships involved day-to-day litigation, appeals, and regulations. Berkeley law professor Catherine Fisk, an expert in employment law, told Popular Information that regardless of the internship's designation, the hiring process described in the Liberty Law School email was illegal. Quote, summer clerks, whether Schedule C or not, are not exempt from the requirements of the Hatch Act, which prohibits political tests for hiring, right? So even if it is unlikely that you could get away with saying these summer internships are Schedule C policy determining positions. But even if you could say that, even if they were, Schedule C policy making positions, which can have political tests, the political tests cannot be, do you support the president generally? Right? That's a violation of the Hatch Act. It's a violation of the principle of meritocratic civil service, et cetera, right? It can be a question about, if the president has a policy of, pursuing nuclear policy and deregulation in nuclear energy, right? It would make sense that you can have a political test if you're trying to hire somebody to fill a position relevant to deregulation of nuclear regulations. Do you support deregulation of the nuclear industry? Right? That is a political question that you can ask. It cannot be, do you support the president? Do you disagree with the president on everything, on anything? That is just not an acceptable thing to do. And for context, just to remind people how far we have descended into crazy land, Judd points out that in 2006, there was a huge scandal under the Bush administration when an Office of Inspector General found that the Department of Justice improperly conditioned acceptance into the summer law intern program and related positions on political ideology. They found that the candidates were not asked, they weren't even asked directly about their political views, but reviewers sought to suss out their political leanings through the application process, eliminating candidates for submitting an essay with, quote, leftist commentary and buzzwords like environmental justice or social justice. Others were excluded for members in certain organizations like the American Constitution Society, having a clerkship with a judge who was perceived as a liberal, or having worked for a liberal member of Congress, or having worked for a liberal law school professor. I mean, think about how far removed that scandal is from what we're talking about right now. What we're talking about right now is literally people being hired at the lowest levels. You know, I mean, if this is happening at the lowest levels of government, summer internships, think about what is happening at the top, at, you know, I mean, heads of departments, the secretaries. What are their tests for being hired? It's certainly not competency. Think about how far removed this Bush administration scandal is from what is happening now. It's so gross. And this, you know, this is just the latest example, but the whole Labor Department is in turmoil right now because of so many scandals happening. The New York Times has a report about the scandals within the Labor Department, and the title is "Labor Secretary is a Rare Presence at Department in Turmoil," written by Rebecca Davis O'Brien and Evan Gorlick. And they detail some of these scandals, which, I mean, you should go read the article because it's insane. But I'm going to list a few of them. One of them is allegations of professional misconduct by the secretary, Lori Chavez DeRemer, and her closest aides. Investigators have spoken with several dozen witnesses and reviewed evidence and allegations that the secretary used department resources for personal trips, that she is having an affair with a member of her security team, and that her aides have tried to steer grants to favored political operatives. Her husband has also been barred from the department's headquarters after female staff members accused him of making unwanted sexual advances. In interviews, more than 24 current and former department employees from across the political spectrum described a toxic workplace characterized by an absentee secretary, hostile aides, and a deeply demoralized staff. Most of them spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the department business or because they feared retribution. It's just insane what is going on here. And also, here's another thing that's happening. A top Department of Labor lawyer urges relaxed enforcement in unionized workplaces. Labor solicitor Jonathan Berry said in an internal memo reviewed by Bloomberg Law that Labor Department attorneys should refrain from pursuing legal enforcement in unionized workplaces. Just insane. You can break the law if your workers are unionized, is the message from the Department of Labor right now. And all of this has come out. After all of this came out, Teamsters President Sean O'Brien had this to say in a statement for the New York Times, or one of his spokespeople did. Quote, Lori Chavez DeRemer is the most engaged labor secretary we've had under a Republican administration, consistently visiting workplaces and meeting workers across the country. We look forward to continuing to work with her. I do not care how many places the labor secretary visits. I care if the Labor Department enforces the law. I care if the Labor Department doesn't harass its own employees. I care if the Labor Department doesn't embezzle and misuse funds. That's what people should care about. But it does not seem like President Sean O'Brien of the Teamsters cares about that. And I don't understand why. I really do not. We're about to go into the second half of the program. We're going to have a little bit more fun in the second half. We're going to be talking to David Griscom about the myth of Red Texas. Really excited to talk about some history from the South and more. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. If you'd like to call in, we would love to hear from you. What do you think about what's going on in the Labor Department? Let me know, 844-899-8857. You can leave us a voicemail at any time if you're not able to call in live, tvlr.fm/contact if you want to leave us a written note. And, if you're not going to follow us online, Facebook, YouTube, The Valley Labor Report, to listen to the second half of the program. We really appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week. All right. We're off the radio now. Appreciate everybody for sticking around. Like I said, we got a great second half of the program for you. Going to be talking to David Griscom here soon. Stay tuned. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Folks, welcome back. This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. He's out of office today, but he'll be back next week. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. There's 844-899-8857. You can also send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. If you're listening to us as a podcast, folks, give us 5 stars, particularly if you're listening to me from Tennessee. If you're hearing me in Tennessee right now, you're listening to me on WGOW. Go into your podcast app, give the Valley Labor Report 5 stars. We are already one of the highest-rated news podcasts in Alabama, which is kind of crazy considering, like, you know, kind of running on a shoestring budget here. But we are. But we need to get the numbers up for Tennessee. So let's get those numbers up. 844-899-8857, 844-899-TVLR. We got a caller on the line, and I think I know who this is. A caller from a 617 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is John Murphy. I'm a city letter carrier out of Naples, Florida, branch 4716.
Yeah, John from Florida. I got your voicemail queued up to play, but I figure you can just, since you're calling in, I figure you'll just tell us about it.
Yeah, actually, this relates to your previous letter carrier that I was just on. There's different ideologies, right, with what a labor union is. And I think the NELC, the National Association of Letter Carriers, fully embraces business unionism, right? They feel like they have to be best friends with the employer, USPS, which for me, I believe in the rank and file unionism where the membership is the union. And currently, as he was just saying, like, oh, it's a working relationship and there's little issues. But the biggest issue is across the country, we all get paid the same. And none of us actually make a living wage, right? Unless you're at the top. And to get to the top, you have to be working for 15 years. And the labor movement of the United States fought for the 8-hour day. And as a labor union, we preach live better, work union. And we can't do that right now off of our salaries. So we're in contract negotiations. The NALC convention in Boston 2024 passed a motion to make official policy that the NALC president, during contract negotiations on the first Friday and the third Friday of every month, will give the membership updates. Yesterday was March 6th, Friday, and that was the first Friday of the month, and we got no updates.
Really?
So going forward, the group of us at Next Generation Carriers podcast and all these other networks across the city carrier craft are linking together to push forward a day of action on May 22nd. May 22nd is when the NELC contract expires. And the biggest demand I created, and it actually starts to resonate, a lot of people are talking about, is 30 for 30, right? $30 an hour starting wage. Because currently you come in with very little benefits and you're getting paid $21.25 an hour, which in big cities, because we're city carriers, not rural carriers, we're city carriers, you can't even get that. You could go work at Target. You could work inside air conditioning for that kind of money. So we're pushing for 30 for 30, right? $30 an hour starting. And a lot of people in the union bureaucracy is like, well, what are you willing to give up? As a rank and file union member, we should be saying we're not willing to give up anything other than management. In the 1990s, the ratio was 1 manager for every 20 city carriers. Right now, it's 1 for every 7. It's very bloated. Under DeJoy, management actually increased. Postmaster DeJoy increased management. Currently, there's 14,000 people at USPS headquarters, 14,000 workers at USPS headquarters. There's 14,000 postmasters across the country. There was 27, almost 28,000 supervisors. As they keep telling us that they're broke and mail volume is going down, as your previous letter carrier echoed the same business talk, is the mail volume's down. How is that possible when the supervisors are increasing? So on May 22nd across the country, we're organizing informational pickets outside of post offices from across the country. And this is not just city carriers. We also have rural carriers on board. We have APW. I got off the phone yesterday with Mike Bates. He's the president of Iowa. He's fully on board. I got off the phone yesterday with someone in Arizona. He's a chief steward for the clerks. They're on board. And I got off the phone with a rural carrier in Washington State on the West Coast, and they're on board. So May 22nd, the idea is to do informational pickets to save USPS from mismanagement. And the demand is we're going to send out a press release, get the media there, get the customers there. But the audience that we're targeting is the politicians. And that's something our unions, our labor unions, don't go after, right? They say, oh, just donate to the PAC fund and we'll take care of you. But we have midterms coming up, and every single congressperson is up for re-election. So they should be earning our vote. So on May 22nd, we're going to be doing informational pickets, and we're going to have petitions and letters for people to fill out, and we'll be mailing them to their congresspersons. And the idea is our health insurance keeps going up, but that's not a contractual issue, right? We want USPS to fully fund us, just like we always talk about with the Teamsters, right? The UPS fully funds the Teamsters health plan, right? The Teamsters don't pay out of pocket for that. And that's how it should be for city carrier crafts, for the postal workers, right? Every couple of years, we end up paying more as a percentage. And if we don't draw the line in the sand at some point, we're going to be down to paying 50-50, right? Right now, it's 72%. So we're going to want to knock on the doors of Congress people to knock on the doors of USPS Board of Governors. Because somehow our unions are so friendly with that, and we never address that with the city carrier craft, with the postal crafts, APW, the clerks, mail handlers, and rural carriers. But the USPS Board of Governors has the oversight. And they're seeing all these OIG reports coming down about mismanagement. Only 40% of new hires actually stay. That means 60% quit within the first year. Nearly 1 billion in grievances were paid out in the over the course of 3 years. That's all mismanagement, right? That's all mismanagement. That's not the workers' fault that they're broke. So May 22nd, we're going forward. If anyone's listening and they want to get active, go on to nextgenerationcarriers.com and you'll see our icon. Just click the icon, fill in your information. And I'm calling also in regards to organizing this, right? Like, not many people understand how to organize something. So on March 15th, next Sunday, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, we're having an organizers meeting. And this goes out to all postal workers. Jump on board with that. If you want to get involved with that and help start organizing a rank and file union again, right? Go to nextgenerationcarriers.com/May or just nextgenerationcarriers.com and fill in your information. I'll be in contact with you. And
appreciate the call, John.
I call in this because.
Oh, what?
Right. Yeah.
I had a question for you. Don't hang up.
Let me just finish real quick because I want to plug this with postal workers, because last year the rural carriers, because you're across all southern states, the rural carriers try to push forward to decertify from the rural carriers union because the postal service went and destroyed their rural carrier routes, and they ended up losing on average $7,000 a year. So this is not just a fight for city carriers. This is a fight for postal workers in general.
Yeah. The requirement to do some sort of open bargaining type thing, would the information about collective bargaining beginning in the postal record that came out this March and the president's message at the beginning of that, does that doesn't count for was there a specific thing?
Yeah, there was bullet points, right, on what open bargaining looks like. Putting updates in the postal record is good. That's only once a month.
Right.
Whereas the other one that got passed at the convention was the first and third Friday of every month, and that's what we want, right? That's the most current, updated news.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Brian Renfro.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Wouldn't if I were to ask Renfro, hey, letter carriers are saying they didn't get anything by the first Friday of March, wouldn't they say, and not unreasonably, well, we have something, we've got stuff in the postal record that was out the first Friday in March. Does that?
Well, the postal
you see what I'm saying?
The postal record is, yeah, I get what you're saying, but like the postal record is pre-written a week or two before it goes out for print, right? So even if it's in a printed format, it's still already outdated, right? It's already outdated. And as a rank and file members, right? It's an organization by the rank and file. We pay into these dues, so the union members should be able to access the most up-to-date information, right? Like we have our website, the NELC.org, and there's a members portal, right? You type in your postal ID number or your union ID number and you log in. There's no reason why any union member cannot access updated collective bargaining information. Like we don't even know when the actual meetings have occurred, right? We don't know if they just sat down once to do ground rules and that was it. There's been no real updates on what has been actually going on back and forth. That's why I think having the first and third Friday updates would actually be more beneficial, because at least you could say, all right, we meet every 2 weeks and this is what we talked about this week. This is what we talked about the second weekend.
Okay. All right. John from Florida, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857 if anybody wants to call in. I believe we probably have David on the Zoom, right? We're really excited to have this conversation. David Griscom is author of the new book, The Myth of Red Texas. Check that out. It's got a bunch of cowboys on the cover. Also co-host of Left Reckoning and co-host of and host of The Jacobin Show on YouTube. You should check all of those things out. You should buy his book. You should check out Left Reckoning, and you should check out The Jacobin Show, Left Reckoning and The Jacobin Show on YouTube. David, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. Thanks for coming on.
One of my favorite places to be. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you about this. I was able to finish reading the book this week. It's an easy read. It's a short read. Folks can see, it's not very long. And I think it is kind of in the vein of, a lot. There are several books, probably not enough, but there are a bunch of books about kind of uncovering populist and anti-plutocratic movements and forces within the South in particular, because when people think about populism and kind of quote unquote left-wing politics, they think about places like New York or even the Midwest or the West Coast, and the South really is totally overlooked. But if you're a student of history like you are and like I try to be, like Adam is, then you know that there's a huge amount of information and so much effort and work and blood and sweat and tears and death that people sacrificed to fight against the plutocrats and the robber barons of their day, including in the South. And there are some really good books that cover that, like The Southern Key by Michael Goldfield, The Challenge of Interracial Unionism by Daniel Letwin. This is more of a political, kind of a more mainstream thing, but I think that Jim Folsom in Alabama, the governor of Alabama in the 50s, I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff that happened there. Big Mules and Branch Heads by Carl Grafton and Ann Permeloff, I thought was a good book. And so I kind of see your book as something in the tradition of those books, Hammer and Hoe, a little bit less kind of academic. I think you want it to be more for a popular audience. All of those books that I just read off were written literally by academics, and I think you want yours to have more popular salience. Is that what pushed you to write the book, or was there, what was the impetus? What kind of gave you the idea to write The Myth of Red Texas: Cowboys, Populism, and Class War in the Radical South?
Yeah, well, again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. It's been a lot of fun working on it, and it's nice now to hear from people who have read the book, other than just my wife and my editor. So, One of the things, I will just note really quick one thing that you noted how sometimes people associate populism with other parts of the country. I mean, maybe this is, one of the big reasons why I wanted to write the book. In fact, not only does Texas have this very strong populist and left-wing tradition, in many ways, one of the big forces that they were pushing up against was some of the conservatism that existed in the movement, not coming out of the South, but coming out of other parts of the country, particularly. Places like New York ended up being pretty consequential when it comes to kind of rejoining the populist movement into the Democratic Party. But that's neither here nor there. Why did I write the book? I'm somebody who's very interested in Texas history, and really this book started after Bernie Sanders' 2020 loss. I was thinking about populism, right, which is a term we all use to kind of represent our politics for a while. And I started kind of digging into the Texas populist tradition, which I had been somewhat familiar with, but I really kind of made an effort to dive deep into it and understand how Texas had such a strong third-party movement in this period of time, before kind of digital organizing, before really the rise of labor unions. So I started investigating all of this, and I started finding not only did Texas have a kind of interesting tradition, but one that I think had tremendous lessons for us in the labor movement, for us who are fighting for democracy today, to learn from. And one of the more exciting things was kind of going through this history, finding these moments like the fence cutters, and seeing how our history is kind of misrepresented even to us. It's cliche to say these things, but people always say, the victor writes the history, and finding out that actually is the case, and feeling the need that there should be a corrective to it. And another aspect of the book too is I'm not the first one to kind of write about this. There's been a lot of really great books on Texas in particular the past few years, but I really wanted to write something, as you noted, that was kind of that you could kind of pick up as a kind of average layperson, and gain a lot from, because this history feels very far away in some aspects, but it really does resonate. A lot of the questions they were dealing with, the questions of how to organize people across large swaths of the country, how to kind of build political movements that are effective and also can maintain themselves through ups and downs. Political party questions, should you run as a Democrat or should you run as an independent? And how to kind of fuse labor organizing with political work. Like, these are all questions that we're dealing with today. And there's a lot of lessons about what worked and what didn't from this kind of radical moment in Texas history.
I like all of that. And I do think, history is something that I think can be instructive in a lessons learned sort of thing, like what were the mistakes they made, but also in inspiring people and remembering that there were, some victories, and there were people just like us who were fighting the good fight 100, 200 years ago. And so I want to talk about some of those stories that you mentioned in the book, and you mentioned the fence cutters already, and I think that's a good place to start. They're on the cover of your book. I don't know if these particular cowboys were fence cutters. Maybe you do. But the cowboy is so much, and you talk about this, about how the cowboy has been turned into this symbol of rugged individualism, and that may not be as accurate to the history of actual working cowboys as people on the right would like us to believe, right?
Yeah, it's just a fundamental part of Texas culture and Texas life now, especially now. When there's been such a revival of let's call it like a Western culture, the image of the cowboy becomes something that's worth kind of reintroducing people to what that history was versus the kind of movie version. Because yes, the cowboy now is seen as a kind of a symbol of individualism above all else. When in reality, these were people who needed to work amongst one another, and also worked in a kind of a social context of the open range. And the open range was this concept people know it, probably from folk songs, things like that, right? The open range. This was an idea of a kind of, collective ownership of the land, or at least collective access to the land. And this system really fundamentally changes in Texas as we see this influx of northern capital and European capital buying up tremendous amounts of land in the state. So what ends up happening is that this old way of cowboying, right, the thing that we kind of base our myths and our movies and our novels about here in Texas, it starts to die out with the advent of barbed wire. Barbed wire is a new invention at this period of time, and it allows large landowners to start enclosing tremendous amounts of land. At first, they are just kind of putting this up on a spray on land that they may own, or things that maybe they have a dispute with somebody. But they just start to realize eventually that they can just start claiming tremendous amounts of land for themselves. So they start covering up access to water, access to good grassland, and the whole idea of moving like a large herd of cattle, that starts to disappear because you can't navigate through this new maze of barbed wire with these big landowners who are kind of, enclosing upon the land. So at first, poor working class cowboys start cutting fences literally just because, like, hey, I got cattle, I got to get in the water. But it very soon takes on a political context, and cowboys start organizing themselves into gangs. The Javelinas, the Blue Owls, my personal favorite, the Knights of the Nippers. And they start cutting down fences, not just because they need to, but because they are against this enclosure by the rich, against our kind of common land in the state of Texas. It takes on this political character. In the book, there's a lot of kind of very colorful newspaper articles and letters that I cite of the support that the fence cutters had from everyday people. But it becomes a hot war. It becomes the fence cutting wars because these large landowners start to organize and hire goons and thugs to shoot at people who are cutting fences on their land. And of course, it being Texas, these landless cowboys also weren't going to take this sitting down. So it becomes a very active conflict. And the way it kind of ends is, one, the Texas Rangers basically brutally, violently put it down. There's tremendous threats to the lives of the fence cutters, but also very classic thing in Texas politics, very classic thing in Southern politics, hell, very classic thing in American politics. The Texas legislature gets together and they write two different rules, one for the rich and one for the poor. For the rich, fencing in land that doesn't belong to you is just a misdemeanor. Hey, whatever. Cutting a fence becomes a felony. So this is something that was used to kind of quell this kind of agrarian, kind of proto-populist, because it's kind of before the rise of populism in many ways, but to try to quell this movement. But this is just one story of many in this book that kind of buck these ideas of individualism, of conservatism in Texas politics, and also one of the reasons I wanted to write this story, and the fence cutter story is so interesting to me, is if you go and you look at Texas history blogs, the way that the story is always told is this is how law and order came to the state of Texas, because there are all these lawless guys cutting down fences and the Texas Rangers shut it down. When in fact, fence cutting was so prevalent in the state of Texas, if you're somebody who's a 6th, 7th generation Texan, you're more likely to be related to a fence cutter than you are to a Texas Ranger. And I think it's pretty important that we understand ourselves in this larger tradition of Texas as we're trying to build our labor movement and our pro-democracy movements here.
That is, I think, the idea that land is something that is and ought to be, if not held in common, accessible by the common people without them owning it. That is something that is so far removed from the popular consciousness that I do think it's difficult for people to really feel the truth of that statement, that the kind of the political ideology of today is really markedly different, and how rigid it is, and how inflexible it is with respect to property rights. That it's difficult for people to imagine that actually no, not that long ago, there was contestation about whether or not people ought to be able to fence off the open range. That was a real live question that could have gone one way or the other.
Yeah, and not only could it gone one way or the other, though, if we're being popular, materialists, it probably was going to go away because it was such a threat to the power of capitalists and large landowners. But yes, it was an open question, and one of the aspects of this book that I find the most interesting to write, and I hope kind of rings true to people, is like some of these ideas. Like if you were to start talking about, common ownership of the land today, people would say like, hey, you're kind of a crazy socialist who's importing all these ideas from outside of Texas into Texas. When in fact, we have this very real homegrown tradition, right? In many ways, holding onto that is a stronger tradition than the kind of private property maximalism that dominates Texas politics today, right? And this is something that I think is very important to remember about Texas and a lot of these other Western states as well, is that there's a lot of kind of radical aspects to the Texas government, for example, like the Railroad Commission and all these things that came about during the populist movement not because of, anything that's innate in Texas.
Uh-oh. Did we lose him? David, I don't know if you can hear us, but I cannot hear you. He may have gotten disconnected or Ruh-roh. Well, I think that, what he was talking about there about how, ideologies like this, and I'll kind of riff for a little bit while we're waiting to get him back up. But, the idea that ideologies like this are always imported from outside is a really nefarious lie. It's just not true that, homegrown Southerners, people who are born and raised here, it is just not the case that we can't say that, I actually don't think that the people who do the least amount of work should get the most. The people who don't actually create the majority of the value that an enterprise has, we don't think they should be able to own it. People have been wrestling with these questions everywhere as long as there has been an economic system, right? So, looking forward to hearing more from him. And as one of the things that I want to talk to him about after we get off of the Cowboys is the populist encampments. I had heard about the Cowboy strike. I had heard about the fence cutters because, I watched Left Reckoning and I listened to, I kind of follow David Griscom's work. And so I'd heard him talk about these. But the populist encampments is something that I did not realize. There were, in Texas, they had these huge events where, this quote from the book, attendance was often in the thousands, even up to 15,000 attendees were not beyond expectations. The carnival-like atmosphere was complete with merry-go-rounds, barbecue, and even dancing, though this was set well to the side to avoid the ire of older attendees. The events would last upwards of a week, with speeches and opportunities to meet famous and influential populists and time to enjoy music, prayers, and sermons. As political scientist Roscoe Martin put it, for a whole week they lived and breathed reform. By day and night they sang of populism, they prayed for populism, they read populist literature, and discussed populist principles with their brethren in the faith. That is something that really is so difficult to imagine today. Although I suppose if you were around for Occupy, that's something that, and you were in New York, you could kind of, there was kind of a similar thing that was happening there. But the closest thing that I have ever been to in my life like that is probably the Labor Notes conferences. And those are totally different than what we're talking about here, because the Labor Notes conference is such a self-selecting thing. It's like the most dedicated militant unionists from across the country. You get 5, 10, 20, maybe 100 from each state, and they come and you get 5,000 people in one place for, a weekend or so. But being able to attract 15,000 folks from, 100-mile radius or something in the rural South is amazing. And I can't, it's difficult to imagine what that would be like and how much hope that would give you for, a brighter future, being able to have so many people that are so close to you hoping and praying and fighting for the same thing. It's a really exciting story that he talks about in the book. Have we got David back yet? Okay. All right, David, I think we got you back now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You're muted, I think. 1, 2. Can you hear me? You're muted if you're talking. Or I can't hear you if you're talking. I don't know on whose end it is. And your camera's off, so I'm not sure if you're hanging out with us right now. Something else that I also didn't realize that he talks about in his book, and hopefully we'll be able to get him back up, is that the Texas Socialist Party was, for a couple of elections, the second most vote-getting party in Texas. Right, so the Socialist Party in Texas was the second party, and the Republicans were the third party for a time, for a very short time, but still for a time. And that is kind of an astounding fact of history that I'm interested in talking to him with, talking about how that actually happened. That we got, that it happened that the Texas Socialist Party was the number 2 vote-getting party in Texas, over and above the Republicans, right behind the Democrats. Did I hear him there? Did I hear something from his mic there? Let's actually go to a break for a moment. Let's play the interlude between the first half and the second half, and see if we can figure this out.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future? A career that can have you set for life and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger food drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite here.
Okay. Well, I would. Oh, okay. We're back. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Had a little technical difficulty there, but I believe we got David back. Thanks for hopping back on, David. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I think we literally got struck by lightning.
Jeez,
so there's no power in my house.
Crazy.
So happy to get through.
Yeah, I wonder if Greg Abbott was able to get a hold of some weather machines. So you were talking about, the way that the way that there's an attempt to paint any ideology that really any ideology that challenges capitalism and owners and robber barons as something foreign, but specifically with reference to the fence cutters and the cowboys, there's an attempt to paint that ideology as foreign, as something outside of Texas. You can pick up from there.
Yeah, I mean, and first of all, they did it at the time. They even though this is way before kind of the modern iterations of the Red Scare, they were called, communist agitators and all of that kind of stuff. But this movement was extremely popular, and one of the things that I really enjoyed about putting this book together, and I hope people enjoy while they're reading it, is I really tried to, as much as possible for this period of time, allow the words of everyday Texans to kind of make the points for me. So in the fence cutting story, for example, there's some really great letters and bits that I have from, just everyday people who are writing in support of the fence cutters against this kind of growing system of private property. And particularly, there is a bit about the kind of, quote, money god, which was destroying ways of life in the state of Texas. So even at this period of time, Texans kind of saw that something was shifting and something was kind of really changing everyday life there that was a direct threat to their identity and understanding of themselves as Texan, which is kind of ironic if you look at what side the kind of ruling party, the ruling figures of the state would probably align with. They would align with the landowners over the fence cutters. And I think it's just one example of many how our leadership in the state is just completely out of touch, one with Texans today, but also with Texas history.
I think that the being able to utilize and take as our own that religious language about the corrupting influence of the money god, of Mammon, I think is important, and we shouldn't shy away from that. I mean, I was talking to my mom like a couple of weeks ago about the TVA and how there are people out there that want to privatize it, that want to turn this government-owned entity that produces some of the most reliable energy in the country, some of the lowest cost energy in the country, that's a great boon for economic development in the region, that is able to, while it's doing all this, provide good-paying union jobs for workers in the Tennessee Valley. And it's like it's the best thing that's ever happened to people in the Valley, basically. And, my mom was like, well, what do people on the other side of the issue even say? Like, what do they say? And why do they want this? And I'm like, well, they worship Mammon, and they're possessed by demons, and, they, a little bit satanic, I think. And she's like, come on, Jake, be serious. And, a little bit, I'm kidding, but yeah, if we believe in these things, God literally says in the Bible that money, the love of money is the root of all evil. And so it's probably, I know that they don't conceptualize of themselves as worshiping money and being, possessed by Satan and stuff like that. But if those things are real, then that's got to be what's happening in these cases, right? And so I love seeing, I love seeing other people, see my own arguments echoing people in the past that have made some of those things, some of the same arguments.
And the religious side of all these movements is indispensable. I think that's another aspect that I found to be really interesting in writing the book, was to see both with like the populist movement and then later with the socialist movement, just how central a particular kind of radical Christianity was in both kind of bringing people into the movement, but also giving them a kind of sense of their place in this larger movement. There was an understanding that, like, yes, they're up against it, but they have history and in many cases God on their side. And when you're up against some of the most violent thugs, as they were, who literally when it comes to the socialists and even to a certain extent the populists, start killing people for their political beliefs in the state of Texas. You need to have a kind of deep well to draw from, and the kind of religious aspects of these movements I find to be very, very inspiring and interesting, especially because it wasn't some kind of gimmicky thing where somebody's like, oh, if we talk like Christian, then like folks will join us. It very much came out of people's Christianity and the kind of Christianity that was dominant in Texas at that time, which again is very interesting, kind of compared to the contemporary scene, where I think for the most part the left and aspects of a kind of more radical labor politics, have kind of like taken a step back from religious life in the state of Texas. And you see one of the major differences between then and now was just like how central church life was, or even for people who didn't go to church, because Texas was also fairly rural. And a lot of those communities, like they just, you weren't able to, but using religious language, using the gospel, and citing it as part of your politics was just central. And it was like breathing air for these people.
If I'm remembering correctly, you recount a story about the Southern socialists talking about almost being rebuked by some of their more secular counterparts in like New York. And I remember, and I can't remember where in the book this was, but I remember, thinking of the New Atheist stuff, like an allegory to the New Atheists during the socialist movement in the early 20th century, and being like, wow, they were even lame back then too. So I don't know if you've picked up on that parallel, but.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is one of the things that, like, a lot of the history of this moment is fairly good. And there was a lot of movements like in like the 60s and 70s to really take deep dives into these moments. But there's always been this kind of sense that, the populists and the Texas socialists, they weren't really kind of anti-capitalist. Those were just kind of strong words that they were using. And one of the things that's often cited is the religious aspect of these movements. And I hope I show fairly convincingly in this book that nothing could be further from the truth. In many ways, these people who had very limited access to education were so committed to these ideas of learning about socialism, of learning about capitalism. They were more committed in some ways than many of their modern counterparts. Just if you think about the educational hurdles they had to go overcome in order to to write and understand these kind of things. So no, the religious language, which is always used as a kind of knock against them as like not being serious or intellectual, was so off base. When it comes down to it, because these were very sophisticated thinkers. These were people who were trying to use ideas that they were reading, from people like Marx, from people like Kautsky, to kind of improve their lives. And yes, they used religious language because that was the language of the time. I mean, one of my favorite quotes, I open up a chapter with it, is kind of a socialist tenant farmer in West Texas who writes into the Rebel, which was the major socialist newspaper, and he says, give me that old time religion, Jesus Christ, and socialism. Well, another kind of fun.
Well, I'll jump in and say that I had the pleasure a few years ago, right after workers in Bolivia defeated the right-wing coup. Unfortunately, things have kind of devolved since then, but I had the pleasure of interviewing people in Bolivia, the president of one of the largest labor federations in the country, some reporters from the country, and a rank-and-file 30-year coca grower. And so I asked her about about socialism, right? Because she was a supporter of the MAS and the movement towards socialism party, and she used very religious language in her answer to me about how it's great. I mean, this is I'm a socialist because I'm a Christian sort of deal, and so we don't even have to just look in the past to see that. There are people all across the globe who see parallels between their religious convictions and their political convictions, and I think that and if you had something else that you wanted to say on that before we go into the populism, then feel free. But I think that's a great kind of segue into the building of populism in Texas, moving from the cowboys into that part of the book. Because there's you have a story in there about a preacher who set out to debate the populists, and he came away he came away as one of the biggest advocates of populism, and he became like a traveling speaker for the populist movement. Can you talk to us about how populists were able to gain power in Texas and what that was like?
Yeah, well, that he was actually a socialist, so that's a little bit later.
Okay.
That was no worries. He was G.G. Hamilton, and he was debating against socialism across the state of Texas, and he converts very famously and drops to his knees and declares himself a socialist, which the Socialist Party of Texas made a very big deal about, obviously for propaganda purposes. But it was a genuine conversion, and he spent most of his life in the movement. I wrote a very great column called "The 5-Minute Sermon" in the Rebel, which was kind of imbuing kind of Christian socialism for Texans. But yeah, no, the populists. I mean, the populists in many ways, I think that's the most effective and powerful of these radical movements in Texas. They end up overtaking the Republican Party as the second major party in the state of Texas. In fact, many scholars argue that they did, in fact, win a governor's election in Texas, but it was brutally stolen, both by outright intimidation, ballot stuffing, and the destroying of votes. So this was a movement that wasn't just, hey, oh, wow, this is historically interesting. There's an alternative party in Texas that did kind of well. This was a party that actually shook the power structure of the state. And the state, the ruling class in Texas really had to resort to tremendous amounts of violence to break and shut down this moment. But the populists, they come about basically out of economic organizing. So farmers in the state of Texas are getting totally destroyed. And this is something that I don't know how similar it was in Alabama. But in Texas, in Louisiana, in Arkansas, and in Oklahoma, the kind of dominant mode of production for cotton, which is the vast majority of the state's economy at this point. This is where most people, if you're a working person, this is how you are working. They're getting screwed over by this merchant class that I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but they basically set up this system that's highly exploitative against working people. Working people start asking themselves this question: why is it that those who work most get least, and why do those who work least get most? And they start organizing themselves and saying, hey, what are some ways that we can improve our economic condition? And they sort of think, okay, maybe crop diversification, all these other things. But sooner or later, they realize that we need to be able to leverage our power collectively against the merchant class that's screwing us over. And eventually they realize that the only real way to do that is probably as with the help of the government, right? They need state support to be able to do this. So there's a lot happens in this period of time. So that's like a quick version of it. But the populists come up out of like this very particular and very kind of practical organizing. And they set up this movement that they're wandering all across the state. They have these traveling lecturers who just go from town to town and will just set up on a soapbox and start talking about the systems that they want to put into place, start decrying the concentration of power with the elites. And most people who have heard of populism, they've probably heard about silver. as well. Is that they wanted to include the coinage of silver as part of the populist movement, which is absolutely true and is critical. But I do think that understanding, that kind of like, AP US history understanding really ends up like overshadowing all the other stuff that they were doing, because they wanted to create all kinds of forms of like cooperative ownership of different kind of models to set up to help out working people get out of the business cycle that was so devastating to them, and also like very progressive kind of things that would look very similar to some of the demands that you would see from the Bernie Sanders campaign. And this movement, it takes a little while for people to be able to kind of recognize its seriousness, but in the period of just a few short years, it just becomes a massive part of Texas politics. And the people involved in it are all of these just kind of like fascinating storybook characters. You have HS Stump Ashby, who was a former rodeo clown, Confederate veteran, and ends up being one of the major leaders of the populist movement. You have somebody whose name was Cyclone Davis, who allegedly gave some speech, I believe, in Tennessee, where he merged like the Bible with Thomas Jefferson and populism in such a way that just left all of his opponents stupefied, and they called him the Cyclone from Texas. And you have all these people kind of traveling around the state, really creating this party-like, carnival-like atmosphere that is very attractive to folks who are going there, one, to see, these kind of larger-than-life characters give these wild speeches, but two, seeing something that's like, hey, this is actually a way that I can improve my life. And this was a period of significant economic devastation. So it becomes a movement that starts out kind of small and a long shot that ends up becoming very dominant in the state of Texas in just a few short years. And I would also note that all this is going on while the Democrats are trying to figure out ways to incorporate some of these populist ideals, because there was a kind of populist wing within the Democratic Party. But eventually, even though they're able to get some of those things passed through the Democratic Party at the beginning of the 1890s, this alternative group of power becomes something that's very offensive to the Texas Democratic Party leadership, and they basically excise and try to humiliate all the populists, which only encourages more and more people to join the People's Party outright.
I will say, you mentioned Alabama, and there was a very similar dynamic in Alabama. I think scholars generally agree that the 1892 election was stolen from Reuben Kolb. I knew his name was Kolb, but I had to look up his first name. He was running in the Democratic primary. He was running as a Democrat, but had the endorsement of the Jeffersonian Democrats, who were kind of like the populists in Alabama, and the People's Party. Actually, the People's Party, the separate populist party, endorsed him in the Democratic primary, and he lost in lots of ballot rigging and ballot stuffing, intimidation, stuff like that. And that's actually a big reason why they rewrote in Alabama the state constitution in 1901 to disenfranchise black folks, do the poll tax, grandfather clause, all that kind of stuff.
It's identical in Texas, yeah.
In the interest of time, I want to all of these movements are not, you take care to point out and underline and emphasize that none of these movements were beaten politically, right? I mean, the right-wing reactionary pro-capital, pro-robber baron forces did not make a better argument and win popular support in Texas, or, this is outside of the scope of your book, but I would argue across the South. They didn't win the popular argument. They defeated the popular sentiment through, election rigging, through violence, through intimidation, through murder, assassinations. Could you kind of take us through some of that from, it's in every story. The cowboys, some of them were killed, assassinated, intimidated. The populists killed, assassinated, intimidated. The Socialist Party killed, assassinated, intimidated. Attempts to deport socialists. I don't know if there's any story that you want to pick out, but what would you say about what that says for the prospect, maybe, of populist type politics?
I mean, I think it shows that there was it was something that was serious that they were very afraid of, and that's why they had to resort to such violence to defeat it. I mean, yeah. So like the populists, they build this coalition that is so threatening to the state. The state government basically, sets up, all these things like the poll tax. And also whips up anti-black sentiment and white supremacy across the state of Texas in response to this movement. I have a story in Grimes County, which is just so fascinating to me because you had this like white populist sheriff who had black deputies working with him, and you have this kind of quiet white supremacist movement in the county that was unable to beat them politically for years. But once all this kind of like anti-populist sentiment, threats, and attacks start happening in the state of Texas, you see those white supremacists kind of, raise their ugly little heads, and they end up, engaging in a kind of violent retribution campaign against many members of the black community and also the white populace who were in alliance with them, right? And that's just one example of the kind of violent ways that this gets broken down. Later, you have, with the Socialist Party, which had shown a lot of solidarity with the Mexican Revolution, so that didn't make them a lot of friends in Austin and the government, along with their principled opposition to involvement in World War One. Don't forget, Eugene Debs famously, gets imprisoned over this. In Texas, they come at the Socialist Party with the full force of the law. Most importantly, they shut down the Rebel newspaper. It's one of the first papers that is shut down in this country. It is the first one that is shut down in response to World War One. And once you do that in Texas, that was the way that they communicated with one another. So literally, the kind of central organ of this movement, the way that people kept in contact and communicated with one another, gets shut down like that. At the same time, you have the leader of the Texas Socialist Party, Red Tom Hickey, be kidnapped by Texas Rangers. So this movement gets brutally cracked down upon. There are other attempts to kind of like shut down offshoot movements and movements associated and around the Socialist Party. So it effectively gets made illegal to be against the war in Texas and to be a socialist. So this is something that, this wasn't a movement that was defeated politically. I mean, in the larger sense, I guess it's defeated politically in the sense that the state just shut it down. But it wasn't something that was political in the sense of like democracy, the things that we would want to aspire to be. And then you also see this with Emma Tenayuka, who was one of the great labor leaders in the state of Texas. She faces just a horrific Red Scare, red baiting movement against her, and she basically is kind of chased out of San Antonio. And I note in the book, yes, it's like these movements all lose. And I'll note two things. As a Texan, and I'm not trying to be glib here, but like I'm a kid who every year for my birthday we would go to the Alamo. Right? It's fundamental to my understanding of myself as a Texan. And the lesson I always learned from that, or I was always taught, is like in Texas, you stand up for what's right, even against all odds, and even if you're going to lose. I see these kind of movements very much in that kind of line of tradition. Whether or not you agree with how true the Alamo story is, this idea of standing up for what's right against all odds, I think there's something that is distinctly Texan about it, and also understanding that we kind of owe it to all these people to continue this fight today, and to understand our movements as continuations of it, because they did pay the ultimate price, many of them. Right. They did fight against like overwhelming odds. And I think if anything else, in addition to like the lessons we can learn from them, just having a sense of ourselves as part of that tradition, we kind of owe it to those who came before us, just as people.
We had somebody in the chat ask if there's a single greatest Texas history myth that you feel like you were able to bust in the book, and what lessons could somebody not in Texas take from this text?
Yeah, I mean, I think the single largest one is the kind of the general thrust of the book is that Texas is automatically conservative. In fact, conservatism as it exists today in Texas is something that had to be kind of brutally imposed from the top down. To give a historical example of this, going back to the Alamo, we have Dan Patrick, our lieutenant governor here, who's been waging a war on the Alamo system because the CEO and president of the organization was doing programming kind of acknowledging Native Americans existed in this part of the state. And it's like, why is it that the lieutenant governor of like one of the largest economies of the world so fixated on what kind of like museum programming is going on in San Antonio? It's because a very particular view of Texas history is important for conservative party dominance. And on the question of like, what value does this have for people outside of Texas? I would argue a lot. If you're somebody who's involved in the labor movement, if you're somebody who's involved in any kind of like left wing or working class politics, what are the questions you're asking yourself? Well, how do we get people to get involved in the labor movement when more and more people aren't? How do we take on state governments that are willing to do all kinds of horrible things to make working class people's lives worse? How are we able to build political movements that can engage people in politics when most people understandably have decided that politics isn't a place to get involved with if you want to improve your life, right? It's something to be avoided. What kind of organizations should we have? Should we run in parties like the Democratic Party? Should we run in individual organizations? Should we do some kind of hybrid version? In my book, I think every single one of those strategies is tested. And you see the success and you see the failures. And one of the reasons that I actually was so excited about writing this book, and I'm so excited that it was published by The Nation and OR Books, is for it to have this kind of more national audience, because these are the questions that we're asking ourselves on the left today. How do we get people involved in politics? And also, what kind of politics are going to be necessary to take on the entrenched power of the far right in this country? And in Texas, I mean, we're talking about people who are taking on the Jim Crow South. We're talking about people who were, people in the union movement, who this was at a time when like bosses and companies were literally just hiring thugs and killing people, right? Like, these people were really up against it. And the things that they came up with are strategies that, we should be utilizing in Texas and Alabama and Illinois, all across the country.
Yeah, well, what are the things that you think, strategically, that people can take away from this, that particularly in the South, but across the country? Because as I read this book and books like it, I come away both incredibly inspired by the vigorousness and the bravery and the courage and the conviction of people that came before me, and people that I hope I'm good enough to be in the same tradition as. And also, in another breath, disheartened, because I see how much harder they very, very few people in the United States today are at risk of life and limb because of their political or labor organizing. That's just not really something that we have to face today. I do think that, it's getting worse, and certainly there are people in this administration that would like to take us back there, and that would invoke violence and use the monopoly of violence that the state has against political opponents, and there's some moves, some concrete moves being taken in that direction. But by and large, even the most radical among us do not actually face the concern of our local cops just coming and killing us like these people did, right? And so I am like, and so part of me can't help but feel a little discouraged at how much easier it seems like it should be today to galvanize people against the robber barons of the 21st century, when so many more people, not just as on a per capita basis, but even on an absolute basis. I mean, the DSA is still not the largest socialist organization in American history. There are 100 years ago there were socialist organizations that had more dues-paying members than the DSA, and that's crazy, because those members of the socialist organizations really actually had the threat of state and vigilante violence against them for being members of that organization. And so, yeah, like what can we take away from the people that did this in a much more dangerous environment, and encourage people to participate today?
So let me start on a positive bit, and then I can maybe zoom out a little bit. One of my favorite parts of the book, and many people who have read the book have kind of talked to me and said that this is something that they enjoyed as well, was the idea of these encampments. And these encampments in Texas were a critical part of these movements. And what they were was in the summer, and for people who worked in cotton, summer was a downtime. wasn't much to do. So they would organize these massive encampments, and I'm talking thousands of people. And they would go out and they would spend 3 weeks somewhere, and there might be water. People would swim, and you bring your whole family. And it's written about really well by James R. Green, who writes, on the back of all of these little kind of covered wagons was the red flag, right? The red flag of socialism. And, thousands of people would sweat in the Texas summer, and somebody like Eugene Debs would come and speak. People would debate, socialist politics together. You would cook, you would play music, they would barbecue, all this kind of stuff. And it mattered. It mattered not just because, hey, that's a nice time in the summer, but two, when the state really starts coming down and cracking down on people. When you were fighting for your neighbor, you knew who they were, right? When you were fighting for members of the movement, you knew exactly who you were, and you had not just the sense of like common struggle, but also common joy. And I think that there is something that is really important for us to figure out how to rebuild, because we live in a very antisocial time. We live in an extremely antisocial time. We don't have things like that anymore. And I think that is by design. So that's a positive lesson, to maybe learn. The other thing that I think, we have to get back to is organizing specifically, on these kind of class and working class issues. I note in the book that like a lot of times if you spend any time on the left today, and I'm sure a lot of the audience is familiar with this, almost every single conversation that you have in left politics is about rhetoric. Oh man, if we use this kind of language, then we'll get this. If we present our ideas in this way, then we'll get that. Look, I write books, I work in the media. I'm not somebody who doesn't think that stuff doesn't matter, but people focus on it so much that it misses the fundamental point. When people were organizing the Populist Party and they used terminology like the people versus like the rich, they understood who the people were. And we really need to figure out where our basis of politics is and do the work of helping people understand themselves, not just as individuals, but as members of these kind of larger classes, this larger class that's fighting against, the capitalists. It sounds hard. It sounds even abstract, but this is literally what they did in Texas, where they had this traveling lecturer system that I was talking about earlier, where people just traveled around the state and they were giving these lectures, and that's how they were meeting people and helping people understand themselves as part of the movement so that those people could organically participate and make the demands. A lot of political organizations in Texas and nationally now on the left, they do this thing called kind of class-focused politics, which is great. You talk about working class people and what they need, but that's very different from class rooted politics. And class rooted politics is literally like working class people organizing themselves. And socialists and people who are heavily involved now, like what our job is to try to build those organizations and places where working class people can go, and then let them do the kind of the leadership and say, this is what we want. Because oftentimes you have kind of self-appointed spokespeople of the working class in the left, and while their hearts are in the right place and they're not always saying the wrong thing, sometimes they're talking about stuff that's not of interest or importance to working class people. And one of the things you see with the populists and with the socialist movement is they were very, very serious about making sure that, like, for example, the farmers organizations were run by farmers. So much so that you had like these radicals who did all of the work, right, and are the heroes of my book in many ways. They would start an organization and literally they would open it up. They would have, they'd be seen as a leader of it, and then they would resign immediately and say, we need to have a farmer as the leader of this organization, right? Stuff like that, I think, is going to be really, really critical for our movement going forward, because so much of conversation of politics on the left today is like, oh, should we be in the Democratic Party? Should we have a third party? Should we do this? Should we do that? And one of the major arguments of my book is that if you want to have a people's party, you first have to kind of construct the people, right? You have to have a group of people who are active and understand themselves as members of a class in order to have an organization that represents them. And we're more in that position right now of the early days of this movement, of the kind of populist movement, where they were doing the work of trying to get everyday people to understand themselves as members of a larger class in opposition to the rich and to the bosses and to the ruling elites.
We're already at almost an hour and we haven't started talking about the present day. Have you still got another like 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm sorry for losing power.
No. I mean, it's partly my fault. It's a great book, The Myth of Red Texas: Cowboys, Populism, and Class War in the Radical South by David Griscom, published by the Nation magazine and OR Books. Check it out. You can find it online and buy it wherever books are sold. Coming up to the present day, your book is about Texas. You're a Texan. I'd love to get your thoughts on the primary results from Tuesday and what they mean. What are your? I've got a few follow-up questions, but I guess what are your general reactions to what happened on Tuesday?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about this pretty in depth for Jacobin. Tallarico ran a great campaign. Tallarico, if I'm to put my cards on the table, he's somebody who I think people maybe see as a little bit more left wing than he is, or pro working class than he is. I don't think that he's a moderate or a right wing or anything like that, but he's done a good job at, I think, allowing himself to be seen in many different lights by folks. And part of the reason for it is that he's doing a lot of the things that we have been saying Democrats should be doing for a long time. The fact that if you were to ask most people about what James Tallarico's campaign was about, I'll tell you one of the first things that would come up would be billionaires and money in politics. And he focused on that message relentlessly. And I think that shows why he had such overwhelming support in the parts of the state where Bernie Sanders won during that 2020 presidential primary. Biden won the state of Texas, but Bernie did very, very well, particularly in South Texas and parts of the state that the Democratic Party has been losing support. So what Tallarico did was kind of supercharge the Bernie Sanders coalition, rebuild it. And he did that by doing a kind of, pro politics isn't left versus right, it's top versus bottom, talking about the billionaires, talking about the way that the government is kind of looking out for everyday folks, and really running a campaign that was positive and motivating. I'll just note this really quick. One thing that people will always compare him to, because he's one of the best models that we've had in this state, was Beto's 2018 run. And there's a lot of talk about Beto's 2018 run because one of the things that he did was go to every county in the state of Texas during his campaign. And if you talk to kind of like smart eggheads and political pundits and political scientists, they'll say, hey, that probably didn't actually net him much when it came to actually like converting people to vote for him. He really just kind of supercharged parts of the state that he was expected to do well in the first place. And I'll say that's fair enough and true. But you know what that did? Maybe it was a gimmick, but it made people believe that Beto O'Rourke could win. When you do something confident, like saying, hey, I'll go into Republican areas and make my pitch there, it gave people who were advocating for him and wanted to participate in that movement this sense of victory, right? The sense that they were part of something historic. It wasn't a passive campaign. And I think Tallarico is doing a similar kind of thing. When you talk to people who are Tallarico supporters, I mean, man, they really support that man. So there's a lot, I think, that's positive there. I would suggest to the Tallarico campaign, to take some lessons from Taylor Ramet's victory up in Tarrant County. Taylor Ramet is a union leader and organizer here who flipped a state Senate seat from the Republican Party in an area that Trump won, I think, by like 11 or maybe even 17 points. I'd have to double check the numbers, but just tremendous. And he did that by running a campaign on working class issues. And I think that that's the winning ticket in Texas, as it probably is everywhere.
I think that, I've seen some stuff about how potentially, the positivity of his campaign, even while naming an enemy, could have been something that that helped as well. There was a quote from his, I don't know if this was his acceptance speech, but it's kind of traveled a little bit on Twitter. He said, "I'm tired of being pitted against my neighbor. I'm tired of being told to hate my neighbor. It's been more than 10 years of this kind of politics. Politics is a blood sport. Politics is trolling, and owning politics is total war. It tears families apart. It ends friendships, and it leaves us feeling terrible all the time. This campaign is rooted in a fierce love for the state, for this country, and most importantly, for all of our neighbors." What do you think about the synthesis of a politics that does really attempt in a genuine way to unite people and be less partisan while still being actually more aggressive in naming a particular enemy, in Tallarico's case, the billionaires.
I mean, I think it's a smart move. And again, like, there's a lot of, I would love it. It'd be so much easier to go hard for Tallarico if he did things like support Medicare for all, and his kind of half position on that Medicare for all, is makes it hard to fully advocate for all of his kind of stuff. But I think that this is exactly why what you're noting there is exactly why so many people are excited for him, even in spite of some of those kind of shortcomings, because it's a smart move, right? Instead of this isn't a non-politics politics where he's not naming enemies and kind of like directing people towards the source of their issues, but he's taking away your neighbor from your enemy. And what I mean by that is like, and Texas is a state dominated by Republicans. So when you're saying things about Republicans, you're talking about people in your life. What he's able to do here is he's able to take that Republican idea. There we go. Power's back on. I'm sorry. He's gonna, he's able to take, the Republicans and make it not your neighbor, make it the billionaires, make it Greg Abbott, make it John Cornyn or Ken Paxton. And I think that's a really smart move because it does the kind of uniting that I think most people really want to see without doing it in a way that kind of washes away politics or doesn't name enemies or doesn't recognize that this thing isn't broken by accident. It was broken on purpose by people like Tim Dunn, one of the big billionaires in the state of Texas, by people like Donald Trump, by people like Elon Musk. And I think that that's a really smart way to build and allow people from the other side, from the Republican Party, to kind of come into this campaign, because he's not saying convert and confess and ask for our forgiveness. He's including all of those people in his stump speech when he talks about that kind of neighborliness in politics.
What do you make about the Republican primary? Well, what do you make about the Republican primary, the results of that? Do you think Ken Paxton is going to win? What would it mean for Tallarico to face Cornyn versus Paxton? And while you're answering that, can you give me your take on what it means that more Democrats voted in the primary than Republicans? It seems like on its face that's something meaningful, but maybe not. Did we lose you again?
Are we there?
Okay. Yes, we're here.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I mean, on the question of the fact that so many people voted, I think it shows how excited folks are for this campaign. I think it shows that they had a great that people feel like there's some value in voting in this primary. I hate to be right about this, but sometimes that could be a little bit overstated. You do see this from time to time in southern states where these Democratic primaries can have large turnout votes. So it is a signal that things are good, but I don't want for people to sort of saying like, oh wow, now there's a majority of Democrat voters in Texas. That's just not the case, unfortunately. When it comes to Paxton and Cornyn, could you remind me what the question was there?
Yeah, just any reactions generally to the primary results, what it would mean for Tallarico to go up against Cornyn versus Paxton, and if you think that Trump's endorsement is going to mean anything.
Trump's endorsement will mean everything. I think Tallarico wants to go up against Cornyn. I think everybody in the Democratic Party wants him to go up. Everyone in the Democratic Party in Tallarico wants to go against Paxton. I mean, Paxton is a liar and a crook, and he's just such a loose cannon that I think that they think that would be the best person for them to go up against. What's interesting about Paxton versus Cornyn is, Cornyn really is a very skilled and old school politician, and he is reviled by the Republican base. And I think that it shows a kind of part of this GOP civil war that's been going on for a long time here, that Cornyn, is so reviled that there's been so much money spent against him. It makes Republicans kind of have to pick a side, and you see a difference between like the full MAGA base of the Republican Party, which is certainly represented by Paxton, but also by extension by like the billionaire class, people like Tim Dunn, who, these are people who have been very, very friendly to that more far right wing of the Republican Party. And the Republican primary was a bloodbath for the so-called like moderate Republican, if you could even call them at this point. Dan Crenshaw lost his seat. Which is I'm not a big fan of his, but I'll tell you, people when they learn more about his opponent are going to be might be missing Mr. Crenshaw. And seeing Cornyn continue to do well, though, I think was just a testament to the fact that he still really does know how to do politics in a kind of deep way. I mean, this is a guy whose nickname used to be Big John, and we saw a little bit of Big John when it came to those election results. And the whisper and rumor campaign right now is that Trump is going to probably endorse Cornyn because they do think that Cornyn has just a better chance of winning just because he's less off-putting than Ken Paxton. The real question will be, if that goes in, does Ken Paxton drop out? And Ken Paxton is a total Trump loyalist, but he's also a total egomaniac. So I could see, it going either way if he doesn't get this endorsement.
I will say that, I mean, there's precedent for the base bucking a Trump endorsement. I mean, in Alabama, in 2017, when Doug Jones won the U.S. Senate race, Trump endorsed Luther Strange. You don't know that name, I'm sure, over Roy Moore in the primary. And Luther Strange was actually the incumbent. When Jeff Sessions was appointed Attorney General, Governor Ivey put Luther Strange in there. And so he was running as an incumbent against Roy Moore. Donald Trump endorses Luther Strange, and Roy Moore wins anyway. So, I mean, there's precedent for the base kind of picking the candidate who is actually more aligned with Trump, even if Trump tries to direct them in a different direction. So we'll see what happens.
And Paxton is totally popular with the base too. I mean, he's a laughable character to me, and I think most people on the left they kind of underestimate him. He was the guy who's continued to win elections, and most people he's got a Trump thing where most people know he's corrupt, but they're like, he's our corrupt guy, and people are pissed at Cornyn. So it will be very interesting to see what happens with this runoff. I'll be watching it closely for sure.
To wrap up, we've got a clip to laugh at from the from Third Way. They had a conference last week, and Third Way is kind of an organization dedicated to bringing Democrats to the center or closer to the right. And one of the things that they love to do is bash labor unions. Matt Iglesias was on a panel with the district attorney for San Francisco, with a mayor from Cleveland, Ohio, and with some congressperson that I'm not familiar with. And so we've got this lined up. Griscom, is there anything that you want to say about Third Way or Iglesias to kind of preview the clip before we go ahead and play this?
No, I mean, I think most people know Iglesias. He is a professional contrarian and no friend of labor. And I'm happy he's finding himself more of a platform and more of a home with whatever we want to call this new political formation that they're building that I think appeals to absolutely no one except for Matt Iglesias and co.
Right. Yeah, Matt Iglesias and I mean, millionaires. I think that we included in this clip the DA talking about, there's a lot of billionaires who are Democrats, who give a lot of money to Democrats, and we want to make sure they feel welcome. And it's like, I mean, that's true that there are a lot of billionaires that are Democrats. That's probably
and why do you think that they give money, and why it's just so funny. It's like, this is literally the argument against money in politics, because when you say something like this, you're like, hey, there's a very small group of people, but they give us a lot of money, and us having a popular message makes this small group of rich people uncomfortable, so we shouldn't say it. I don't know, it's very funny to just come out and be honest like that.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and play clip 3, and we'll stop and react during it.
It's incumbent upon the public sector to lay the foundation for private investments. So
okay, let's stop it for just a second here. What we have here is the mayor of Cleveland, Ohio, talking about the importance of the public sector and the importance of a vigorous public sector in attracting private sector investment, which is all good. I mean, no disagreements from this. And I actually, I think that what the Cleveland mayor has to say here is actually really good and not really conflicting with my politics and my values, at least. And I think that he runs into some objections from his co-panelists. Let's continue.
Cleveland was the first city in America nearly 100 years ago to have its own municipally owned airport. And just last year, we announced a $1.6 billion modernization of our airport. I did it through a public-private partnership. So if I want to attract companies, that's one of the most important front doors to the city. But we're going to have a project labor agreement to make sure I have unions at the table through an apprenticeship program to hire Black and brown Clevelanders and women to not only work on the project, but build the project. So
we can stop it there for just a second. When he mentions project labor agreement, you can hear Iglesias say, in a really dissatisfied way. A very small smattering of applause. The lines that get applause, that got applause during this panel were much more of the ones that were attacking the left, rather than trying to identify ways to work with working people. And that's project labor agreements, for people that don't know, are agreements between a developer of a project, the people who are going to be paying for the construction, and the local building trades union council, setting things like wages, training, safety standards, stuff like that. And it's not the case, actually. What the anti-union construction firms say that, this cuts out non-union firms from being able to compete on PLA projects, and it doesn't actually do that. Non-union construction firms can bid to do a PLA project. They just have to pay their workers union wages and give them union benefits while they're working on that project, and they don't want to do that. So they don't bid on PLA projects by and large, but it's just because they don't want to have to pay the union wages. And so, it's not really about competition. It's about making sure that they're able to undercut union contractors. And so, kudos to the Cleveland mayor. And I think that's exciting. $1.6 billion construction projects with a PLA. Great. Maybe it could have all been done public instead of a public-private partnership, but it is what it is. I think that's great. I don't know if you had any comments on that, David. We may have. I don't know. Hopefully when we went to this scene, we didn't accidentally mute David, but we can figure that out while we continue playing the clip.
The local level presents a prime example of how we can have an agenda focused on work, wages, and wealth. And those are the ideas that should be influencing what Congress is going to do in 2026 and beyond.
I think you're touching on something. In San Francisco, we are at a reckoning point with the labor unions putting a wealth tax, or they're collecting signatures for a wealth tax. We have the highest number of billionaires in the country in San Francisco, most of whom are Democrats. Yeah. Most of whom not only donate the most money to Democratic candidates, but also have extensive philanthropic records of giving money, to our city. And right now, our mayor,
I want to pause that for just a moment, and love that she took this opportunity to say, I'm glad that you've got a great relationship with unions in your area. I hate unions, actually. I hate organized working people. They're a little bit too uppity for me. They make rich people uncomfortable. And the reason that we should be concerned about rich people being uncomfortable is because sometimes they give money through philanthropy, which gives them tax breaks, and it's a problem to take the money that they got through the value that other people created, not them. And I mean, we should just be really thankful for them for giving us donations and stuff. And we can't rock the boat too much. We can
Strong on this.
We can continue.
On the public-private partnerships, and they are investing millions of dollars into helping us recover. And so I think we are, again, at a reckoning point in our party with whether or not we can continue to be anti-business, whether we can continue to alienate the people who, yes, have been very successful in this country, and we want them to pay their taxes and give what's due and give back, but at the same time not making them the enemy when we know that they are giving more than most, really, to the endeavors that we think are important, right? And making sure that our city, when the president, when the shutdown was affecting SNAP benefits, they are who stepped in and said, we are going to give the city $20 million to backfill, what the administration took away from families who need it. And that has to be acknowledged.
All right. Well, David, maybe we've got, I don't know, I think it may have been on our end, I don't know, but maybe we've got you back now. What do you think? Does that need to be acknowledged more?
Look, I mean, I think that instead of hoping that a bunch of rich people, find it in their hearts to donate some money from time to time, we make it so that the money that rich people have been able to enjoy and kind of take from the exploitation of the folks who actually produce value in the society, that we should take that in the form of taxes and just direct it itself instead of waiting for a nice gift from a billionaire, a philanthropist. I don't know. We should just tax them. And, you don't need to, I guess, insult them or whatever if this is what you care about. But at a certain point, you need to make a decision if you want to be in politics. Which side are you on? Are you on the side of the rich and of this billionaire class you're very concerned with? Or are you concerned with the people who are on SNAP benefits? Because guess what? Those two things create each other. This billionaire class creates the poverty that we have to have social programs in this country to deal with. And if you want to maintain the power of the super rich, you're going to have super poor. That is just how it is. And this is why the Democratic Party has no idea who it wants to be and who it wants to represent, and is trying to serve two masters at the same time. I mean, that's probably even putting it too kindly, because it's very clear who the actual basis is and who the people who they're very worried about, which is the super rich, the people who are kind of suffering and barely getting by in American society. It's an afterthought, and it's a nice thing that the rich people do. Sometimes they give them some money, versus being, fighting poverty, fighting for working class people, should be the center of your political perspective if you're so-called on the left.
Yeah, right. Well, David Griscom, really appreciate your time. Been very generous. Always love talking to you. Folks should check out Left Reckoning, The Jacobin Show, and buy his new book, The Myth of Red Texas, Cowboys, Populism, and Class War in the Radical South, published by The Nation and OR Books. David, thank you for your time.
Thank you, friend. Really, really was a lot of fun talking.
All right. I think that's going to be it for us this week, folks. Subscribe to the newsletter, TVLR.fm. Donate. Help us stay on the air, TVLR.fm/donate. Get our merch, TVLR.fm/store. And we'll see you next week.